Chapter 1446. The next day. After waking up from his sleep, Noah's hazy consciousness began to wake up. Because an indescribable fragrance rushed into the tip of Noah's nose along with the sound of breathing, causing Noah's consciousness to wake up in an instant. Immediately afterward, Noah felt an extremely soft and elastic delicate body snuggling tightly against him. This feeling made Noah's gradually sobering head suddenly surge into the extremely wonderful memory of last night. It was indeed quite wonderful. Let the peerless, self-respecting Chinese Woollene Alliance master gasp for breath under his body. The taste was simply indescribable. Recalling the wonderful taste of last night, Noah's expression became somewhat comfortable. He lowered his head and looked at his arms. In Noah's arms, Luo Hao, who was naked and covered with only a sheet, was lying there, her red lips unconsciously moaning. Her cheeks were that seductive crimson. Her skin was also a little flushed. Luo Hao's long hair that was as black as the night was like a waterfall that hung down along her slender and beautiful waist. It was wet from the sweat that covered Luo Hao's curvaceous back, making her look exceptionally lovable. Looking at Luo Hao, who was sleeping very peacefully like a little girl, Noah stroked her smooth and slender back and couldn't help but sigh. Undoubtedly, it's so cute. Noah admitted that he did admire Luo Hao's spirit and magnanimity in wuxia. However, this wuxia king did have some shortcomings in terms of personality. His self-awareness was too high, and he was extremely lacking in self-awareness. In the eyes of others, this was undoubtedly a tyrant who was difficult to serve. Noah also had such an idea yesterday. However, now, Noah no longer had a bad impression of Luo Hao's personality, but some helplessness. It's not impossible to be self-centered, but if you're too willful, otherwise, how can you get along with ordinary people in the future? At the very least, this kind of self-centered attitude must be looked at. If she had a high and mighty attitude in front of Noah's companions, then Noah couldn't stand it. I have to think of a way to teach this girl a lesson. With this thought in mind, Noah's hand unconsciously slid across Luo Hao's extremely elastic and smooth back, causing Luo Hao's eyelids to tremble slightly. Soon after, she slowly opened her eyes. That pair of eyes no longer had their previous majesty and valiance, and had been replaced by a watery gentleness. Regardless of whether it was the past, present, or future, the only person who could make Luo Hao reveal such an attitude was Noah. As if sensing that Luo Hao had woken up, Noah snapped out of his daze and looked at the person in his arms. "Are you awake?" Hearing Noah's voice, Luo Hao was first stunned for a moment before coming back to her senses. Looking at Noah, who was looking at her with a smile that was not a smile, and then looking at the two of them hugging each other tightly, Luo Hao finally recalled what happened last night, and her pretty face turned slightly red. "So that's how it is. I, Luo Hao, have finally committed myself to someone else and have a place that belongs to me?" Luo Hao, who said such words with a slightly red face, no longer had the arrogance and majesty of the past. She only had the shyness of an ordinary girl. Compared to the past, it could be said that it was a shocking contrast. Noah couldn't help but feel that it was a little cute. The hand that was holding Luo Hao tightened a little, and he kissed her red lips. Ugh, Luo Hao's eyes widened in surprise, and then more moisture appeared in her eyes. Even her delicate body seemed to have lost its strength and softened. By the time she reacted, Luo Hao discovered that her teeth had been pried open, and her tongue had been captured by Noah and was being tasted with relish. This made Luo Hao's body even more powerless. However, Luo Hao still resisted the weakness of her body. With a red face, she tried her best to push Noah away. After panting a few times, she glared at Noah. Seeing this, Noah was a little curious. "Now that things have come to this, what are you still dissatisfied with? Are you doubting my tolerance again?" Luo Hao said somewhat angrily. "I've already said it many times. Since Luo Zuelian has promised to become your concubine, then I won't have any complaints. If you doubt me again, then it's really too rude." "Is that so?" Noah said as he hugged Luo Hao tightly. "If that's the case, then why are you still rejecting my love for you? It's an honor as a wife to be able to receive love from my husband. Luo Hao's pretty face was slightly red, but she looked at Noah very seriously. However, my husband, you're still an unparalleled ruler. You can't immerse yourself in the land of gentleness. Since you and I are already husband and wife, then we should treat each other with respect. You can't become a stumbling block on your king's path because of me. Please remember this. Hearing this, Noah was a little helpless. It really sounds like something Luo Hao would say. Although this king of Wuxia had a side that was arbitrary and had no self-awareness, no matter what, she was still a Wuxia grandmaster and a traditional woman who had been standing in the land of China for a full 200 years. Even if there were some problems with the concept of being a king, it was not like she did not have the self-awareness of being a woman. Now Luo Hao is like a woman who will silently give and support behind a man. With Luo Hao's view of the identity of a king, it seems natural that she would say such words. Undoubtedly, she has a strong sense of being a Wuxia king and a woman, but why doesn't she have the slightest understanding of being a tyrant? Noah felt incredulous while hugging Luo Hao tightly and said so. Listen to me carefully. If a man will let the woman who loves him become a stumbling block, then this man has already failed. Only if he can handle this kind of thing well can he stand out. Do you think I'm the kind of useless person who will be reluctant to leave the land of gentleness and ignore the court? But you have an excessive obsession with worldly things. Luo Hao shook her head. I'm worried that you will sink deeper and deeper because of this and eventually can't extricate yourself. Isn't there a saying in your country that you can only make a name for yourself after going through a disaster? Noah retorted. If I stay out of it from the beginning, it's just an escape. For me, no matter what it is, I have to experience it. Only then can I see myself, others, and even everything clearly. Well, my husband also has his own ideas. Luo Hao said helplessly. In that case, as a married woman, I shouldn't be an obstacle to you. Don't keep saying that you're an obstacle. Noah curled his lips. In words you can understand, I think, whether it's a person or a king, as long as you can do it with a clear conscience to the world, with a clear conscience to your parents, and with a clear conscience to the world, then you are qualified no matter what. A clear conscience. A clear conscience to his parents. Even more so, a clear conscience to the world. Luo Hao suddenly muttered, and then, she cast a praising gaze towards Noah. It seems that I was confused. Since I thought that my husband would fall because of worldly matters, since my husband has such self-awareness, then I am relieved. After he finished speaking, Luo Hao got up from Noah's embrace, and before Noah could react, he broke free from the blanket and got off the bed. Just like that, the peerless beauty, who was capable of causing the downfall of a nation, exposed herself to Noah's line of sight. Immediately after, her gentle and beautiful body suddenly turned around. As Luo Hao spun around in a circle, a set of feather-like Han clothes suddenly appeared on her body, covering her incomparably alluring body, causing the hem of her skirt to flutter lightly. That scene was simply like that of a fairy. Since Luo Zuelian has already become a married woman, then she should no longer appear in public in front of the world. Luo Hao's eyes seemed to linger on Noah's body as they flashed with extraordinary splendor. My husband, Luo Zuelian, is going back to Mount Lu. Although I am only your concubine, I hope you don't forget that in this life, you are the only one who can make Luo Zuelian willingly submit herself to you. Farewell. With that, Luo Hao waved her long sleeves, and beautiful petals flashed around her, covering her entire body as she disappeared from the spot. Until she left, Luo Hao was worthy of her status as a king, and she left without the slightest bit of reluctance. Looking at the direction Luo Hao disappeared in, Noah couldn't help but say this with some resentment. Undoubtedly, I want to do it again. Chapter 1447. In any case, although Luo Hao was extremely lacking in self-awareness, she did not hesitate in the slightest. Undoubtedly, she had spent the night with Noah, but when she left, she did not have a trace of nostalgia. She did not give the feeling of being heartless, but left very valiantly. Since even the girl was not so hesitant, Noah, as a man, if he still showed a hesitant look, it would be really inappropriate. So, although it was a little regretful, Noah still got rid of the association in his heart, got up, dressed neatly, and walked in the direction of the door. The great sage, heaven's equal, had been dealt with. However, that did not mean that everything had been solved. Because of the appearance of the great sage, heaven's equal, Guinevere came to the island. With the keen sense of the god ancestor as the demon queen, perhaps the other party had already noticed that the last king was in this country. That was hard to say. Under such circumstances, Guinevere would cause some commotion sooner or later. Noah had a grudge with Guinevere. In addition, when he planned to stay in this country, Noah had already made a promise to the official history compilation committee that he would help solve the problems that ordinary humans could not solve. For public or private reasons, Noah had to temporarily entangle with Guinevere. Moreover, Guinevere was definitely not the only one who came to this country. Noah believed that the Black Prince who had been watching Guinevere must have also come to this country. With Yarek's personality, Noah felt that the guy must be hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to attack at any time. As for the target of the attack, it was either Noah who held the Holy Grail, or Guinevere who had a grudge with him. Therefore, at first glance, it seemed that everything had been solved, but it was just the calm before the storm. The appearance of the great sage, heaven's equal, was just a prelude. The real turmoil was about to begin. For this reason, Noah also needed to make some preparations. There was only a short day left before the end of the adaptation time. In order to cope with the growing turmoil, Noah believed that the power of authority was absolutely necessary. If he couldn't use his authority, then even Noah would be in danger in the upcoming chaos. Therefore, Noah had to make some preparations on the last day before the end of the authority's adaptation period. First of all, let the official history committee investigate the whereabouts of Guinevere and Yarek. With this thought in mind, Noah walked to the front of the door and extended his hand. Just as he was about to open the door, a conversation suddenly sounded from outside the door. "All right, Yoli, let's hurry inside." Now. Of course it's now. Don't you usually bring breakfast to His Majesty at this time and eat with His Majesty? But Mr. Noah and Lord Hierarch might still be resting, that's true. If we barge in like this, we might see some things that children shouldn't see, something that a child shouldn't see. It's that, the scene where His Majesty and the sect leader make love. Don't be so blunt. You're too shameless. Listening to the shy and flustered conversation between the two, Noah couldn't help but blush. It couldn't be helped. Yesterday, when Noah angrily asked Luo how to come over at night to serve him, Yoli, Ganji Dongma, and Lu Yinghua were also present. In other words, the fact that Noah and Luo Hao had a night of intercourse was no secret. At that time, Noah didn't think much about it. Under Luo Hao's provocation, he said those words regardless of the fact that there was a third party present. Now, thinking about it carefully, in front of so many people, asking Luo how to come over at night to serve him was simply teaching a child a bad lesson. With Yoli's innocence, she was probably in a mess now, right? And listening to Huey's shy voice, it seemed that even this girl who grew up in nature was not very comfortable with love between men and women. Noah could now imagine what kind of impression he had left in the hearts of the two pure girls. When he thought of the two girls who were a few years younger than him outside the door, hesitating whether to come in or not, in case they saw something they shouldn't see, Noah felt awkward. Fortunately, Luo Hao had already left. Otherwise, just now, if Noah was really in the mood and dragged Luo Hao for a while in broad daylight, and then attracted Yoli and Hui Na's eavesdropping, it would make people want to die. At that moment, Noah suppressed the awkwardness in his heart, pretended to be calm, and directly opened the door. Ah! The next moment, two exclamations sounded at the same time. Noah, Yoli, and Hui Na's gazes instantly met. The atmosphere suddenly became extremely awkward. Yoli and Huey's pretty faces turned red in the blink of an eye. No. Mr. Noah? Yoli's face was red as she shouted in a panic. You. Are you already up? Yes, I'm up. Noah laughed dryly. Speaking of which, when will I get up, don't you already know? But. Hui Na's face was also red as she smiled shyly. Today, the king is not the only one in the king's room. Hui Na's words made Yoli lower her head with a red face. Then, she immediately raised her head and glared at Noah. You really don't have the self-awareness of a king. How dare you act so recklessly and completely disregard the impact of your words and actions on the people around you? You really have no sense of shame. What do you mean by no sense of shame? Noah retorted. Isn't it normal for a man and a woman to make love? Please don't be so straightforward. Yoli said shyly. Even if you want to do that kind of thing, please look at the situation. Is there a problem with the situation? Noah was amused and couldn't help but tease. Isn't this a hotel? Hui Na said in surprise. So this is a hotel for that kind of purpose? Of course not. Yoli vetoed loudly. His gaze on Noah became fiercer and fiercer. Anyway, you are really too impure. You better reflect on yourself. This sentence was immediately met with a sarcastic voice. You actually want the Demon King, the God Slayer, to reflect on himself. You should at least know what's good for you. Or do you really dare to question the Demon King's decision? Following this sentence, Lu Yinghua's figure slowly walked over from the other end of the corridor. Once he appeared, Lu Yinghua looked at Noah with an extremely respectful gaze. He clasped his fist and knelt down on one knee. With an unprecedentedly grand etiquette, he bowed deeply to Noah. Grandmaster, please accept a bow from your disciple, Lu Yinghua. Grandmaster? Noah was stunned. In response, Lu Yinghua maintained his kneeling posture and said matter-of-factly. Since my master is Sir's concubine, then Sir is naturally my grandmaster. Noah did not know what to say for a while. Then, Lu Yinghua raised his head and said to Noah with a rare flattering smile. Just now, my master used the secret method of transmitting sound to me from 1,000 miles away. She told me that I must announce to the world that the leader of the martial arts world in the land of China has a good relationship with my grandmaster. I must let the world know that my grandmaster is the real king who can subdue the wuxia king who is the best in martial arts in the world. I must strengthen my grandmaster's reputation. Announce to the world? Noah was really shocked. Luo Hao actually gave such an order? Yes, now, your disciple is also preparing to follow my master's footsteps. When the time comes, I will naturally announce to the world the grandmaster's power. Lu Yinghua nodded respectfully. Then, your disciple will take his leave. After saying this, Lu Yinghua was like a supporting actor leaving the stage. In order not to hinder Noah, the protagonist, in a flash, he disappeared. He left very quickly. Wait. Noah did not have time to stop him at all. Lu Yinghua had already left. Noah could already foresee it. How shocked and surprised would the so-called world be when they learned of this news? Why did this kind of thing have to be announced to the world? Noah could only look in the direction where Lu Yinghua disappeared with the corner of his mouth twitching. Then, he looked at Yoli and Huina who were looking at him with shame and admiration. He was speechless for a long time. Chapter 1448. Is that so? Noah scratched his cheek. At this moment, an elegant voice sounded softly and slowly. Noah was stunned for a moment, and then he exclaimed in surprise. As this voice sounded, a noble woman slowly appeared outside the door. An eerie silence filled the air. Moreover, Yoli also used a spell to help Huina recover, so one day is enough. Compared to the sudden destruction and disaster brought by a sudden impulse, this kind of God's unfolding was just a small matter for those who were afraid of the Demon King, right? Don't worry, Yoli. This time, Huina was asked by grandfather to be the king's follower. Based on this, grandfather should be willing to lend his power to Huina. She was a very beautiful Caucasian woman with long blonde hair that reached her waist. She was wearing elegant clothes and exuded an elegant temperament. If Hui Na wants to use the secret technique of inviting God to descend, she must often go to the mountains to cultivate, right? Such a sentence made Yoli and Hui Na look at each other, and then they smiled bitterly. There was no other way. Who would have expected such an unfolding? Thinking of this, Noah felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. He had to find a topic to divert her attention. Moreover, before going down the mountain, the people from the committee said that Hui Na may need to work for a long time. Therefore, Hui Na used the Qingxiu courtyard's spiritual spring to cleanse her body in advance so that her body is full of spiritual energy for a long time. Hui Na looked carefree. The burden of borrowing God's power should not be small. Will it take only one day to fully recover? It's not enough to just rest, but Hui Na used a spell to help her recover, Hui Na said. In the battle with Lu Yinghua, Hui Na used the secret technique of inviting God to descend to borrow God's power, so it put a great burden on her body. If Noah was just an ordinary person, Yoli and Hui Na would have looked at Noah with strange eyes. Now, a day had passed, and he didn't know how Hui Na's condition was recovering. All right, it's my fault. It's indeed meaningless to compare humans with gods. Hui Na is already quite amazing among humans. I know that. To humans, that's already quite an impressive achievement. To us, Hui Na is also quite an impressive person. Please don't compare Hui Na to the demon kings who can fight against the gods. And that was the beginning of this atmosphere. Looking at Noah's repentant look, Yoli and Hui Na couldn't help but smile as if they were amused. If I continue to be silent like this, I'm sure I'll be the one who can't stand it first, right? Seeing this woman, Yoli and Hui Na were stunned. By the way, Hui Na, is there anything wrong with your body? Noah was suddenly speechless. He could only raise his hand in surrender. Unfortunately, Noah was a god slayer, a demon king who was not surprising in the eyes of others no matter what he did. However, even if her body recovers, can Hui Na still continue to use the secret technique of invite God to descend? Yoli's attention was also successfully diverted. She finally stopped blushing and looked at Hui Na rather worriedly. However, no matter what, for the whole night yesterday, a man and a woman were having an affair in this room. That was something that couldn't be denied. Anyway, Noah didn't think that it would develop like this until last night. Hui Na couldn't even stay in the human city for more than a month. It was very difficult. The reason why Hui Na grew up in the mountains from a young age was because of this. That's good. Yoli was relieved. Although Hui Na had only been in the human city for a few days, as Noah's follower, it was entirely possible that the head of the witches wouldn't be able to return to the mountains within a month. After a month, the beautiful girl who was known as the best lady in Europe and was respectfully called the princess finally appeared in front of Noah again. At that moment, Noah looked at Hui Na and asked in a casual manner, avoiding the topic. No. Seeing the two witches blushing and not daring to look at the surrounding scene, worried that they would see something bad while silently eating, Noah also sighed in his heart. For the king, the power that Hui Na borrowed is naturally nothing. Hui Na said in a rare tone of annoyance. Understanding Yoli's concern, Hui Na explained in a cheerful tone. I haven't seen you for a month. I thought you were hiding somewhere. It turns out that you are here. You even killed the disobedient great sage equaling heaven. You are indeed the demon king who can even take down 3 of his kind in one fell swoop. After all, the divine power that Hui Na can borrow is only a few 10,000ths of this level of power. Alice? Noah curled his lips a little. It's inappropriate to compare humans with the god-slaying demon king from any aspect, even if he's one of the best among humans. From this point of view, Lord Noah has recently stirred up an incident that isn't inferior to the god-slaying demon king's name. That is to say, even if he stayed in the human city for more than a month, Susanoo would not lend his power to Hui Na just because her body and mind were stained with filth. It should be said that the inexplicable one was actually Luo Hao. Physical condition? Hui Na was slightly startled, and then her attention was successfully diverted by Noah. She answered with an innocent smile. The reason for this atmosphere was naturally Noah. However, for Noah, this atmosphere was a bit unbearable. As a result, as soon as she came back yesterday, Hui Na went back to her room to rest. However, this level of power has already made Hui Na the leader of the witches in this country, and even comparable to the mythological beast. Yoli looked at Noah with a reproachful look. "It's no problem, Your Highness," Hui Na did not suffer any injuries. "It's just that she was too tired because of using God's descent. She had a good rest yesterday, and now she is completely recovered. It's so troublesome to use the power of that pretentious God. It's really hard on Hui Na. To borrow the power of God with the body of a mortal, the conditions required were not only talent, but also to keep the body and mind clean, otherwise, they would not be able to exert their power. For this reason, Hui Na went deep into the mountains since she was a child to keep her body and mind pure and clean, so that her internal organs could breathe the air of the deep mountains and valleys, so that her spirit could reach the realm of six senses and not let her body be stained with the filth and dirt of the secular world." Who made the relationship between Noah and Luo Hao so inexplicable? After Lu Yinghua left, Noah invited Yoli and Hui Na into his room in a rather awkward atmosphere and began to eat breakfast. If it wasn't for Luo Hao's wild imagination, thinking that Noah did not kill her in order to take her as a concubine, and provoking Noah would not have asked Luo Hao to come over and serve him in the bed when he was provoked. As a result, one was impulsive because of anger, and the other was full of self-righteousness and imagination, leading to the inexplicable relationship between the two under the circumstances of taking advantage of the situation. "It's been a long time, Lord Noah." Alice saluted with an action that no one could find fault with, but a pair of watery eyes contained a little smile and playfulness. In the room, Noah, Yoli, and Hui Na sat in a triangular position, each silently eating the food on the tray in front of them, falling into an indescribable depression. In other words, as long as Hui Na stayed in a human city for more than a month, her body and mind would be stained with the filth of the secular world, and she would no longer be able to invite God to descend. As a pure girl, Yoli and Hui Na blushed and lowered their heads to eat. They deliberately did not look around, worried that they would see something unsightly. That was understandable. Even Noah just took advantage of the situation and inexplicably had a relationship with Luo Hao. In the eyes of others, it was even more inexplicable. Chapter 1449. In the room, Yoli took a teapot and poured steaming tea into the teacups in front of Noah and Alice, who were sitting opposite each other. Then she obediently stepped aside and stood behind Noah with Hui Na. Alice, who was sitting opposite Noah, looked at Yoli and Hui Na with curious eyes and spoke to Noah. "Are these two the witches Yuan of the Japanese spell world? Are they your new entourage?" When Alice mentioned them, Yoli couldn't help but be a little nervous. Even Hui Na's expression was a little subtle. Alice Louise of Napal. This noble lady, who was known as the best lady in Europe and had the title of princess, was not just famous. Not only did she become the speaker of the Sage Parliament, that specialized in studying the God-Slayer when she was only 16 years old, but she also once joined hands with the paladin Paul Brantley of the Copper Black Cross to fight against the Black Prince Yarek, who was a God-Slayer and had repeatedly repelled the Demon King in fields other than force. Coupled with the beautiful appearance and elegant temperament that seemed to have come out of the Middle Ages, if there was a ranking in the world that integrated the advantages of women in all aspects, then this girl would definitely be the first on this ranking. Therefore, in terms of fame alone, Alice was not under the Demon King who killed the god. Her beauty and wisdom were things that people in the magic and curse world all over the world knew. Being noticed by such a big shot, Yoli, a simple girl, was inevitably a little nervous, and Hui Na's performance was a little strange. Only Noah knew that the fame was actually just an evaluation of Alice when she put on the mask of a good girl. Although this girl looked beautiful and had a transcendent temperament, her essence was that she was a naughty girl who liked to join in the fun and wanted to see the world in chaos. Therefore, for Noah, although Alice's beauty and elegance were not without, she was more playful and cute. In any case, in terms of female charm alone, Alice was indeed the best in the world. Therefore, Noah's attitude was quite casual. "Based on the time I've been in this country, until I leave, they should be considered as my followers, right?" In fact, only Hui Na was Noah's follower. As for Yoli, it was only because he had a good relationship with Noah that he was asked by the official history compilation committee to continue following Noah. While helping Noah, he could also use this relationship to appease Noah when Noah, the god slayer, was out of control. From this point of view, Yoli could be considered Noah's follower. Of course, Yoli's spirit vision was indeed quite outstanding. Keeping this girl by his side would sometimes be very helpful. In view of this, Noah did not object. Understanding this, Alice pursed her lips and smiled. Her every move was indeed elegant and graceful. First, it was Erica and Miss Liliana, and now there are two beautiful witches. It seems that Sir Noah has quite the potential to attract beautiful women. This is different from other god slayers who lack interest in women. Alice's words made Yoli and Hui Na involuntarily think of Luo Hao's matter again. Their pretty faces blushed slightly again, and they lowered their heads shyly. Noah, on the other hand, took a deep look at Alice and said with a faint smile. Maybe. After all, even the best women in Europe are attracted by me. I can indeed be proud of this. Saying such a sentence, Noah glanced at Alice's lips without a trace. Alice, who noticed Noah's gaze, suddenly reacted. Her pretty face was also red, and she said in a panic. At that time, Sir Noah, you were just messing around. It was not my intention. At that time? Noah made a teasing sound. At what time? At that time. Alice rolled her eyes at Noah awkwardly. Sir Noah, you are still so bad. You have been teasing ladies. You definitely have the potential to be a playboy. In the past, in Alice's home, after Noah helped Alice recover her health with the protection of the priest, before he left, he had also mischievously kissed Alice's lips, teasing the most outstanding princess in Europe. From that time on, probably in Alice's heart, Noah was a bad man who liked to tease girls, right? However, in fact, Noah rarely teased a girl like that. But in the face of Alice, a playful and cute girl who usually pretended to be obedient, Noah always wanted to tease her. Although, in terms of age, Alice was actually 3 or 4 years older than Noah. Who asked you to be so easy to tease? Noah shrugged. Moreover, the lips of the beautiful girl who is known as the Princess of Europe, I believe that as long as you are a man, you will want to taste them, right? This sentence made Yoli and Huina's faces turn red at the same time. Lips? Huina said in surprise and shyness. Has the king tasted the princess's lips? You are indeed the king. Not pure. Yoli also blushed and whispered softly. It's really too impure. Even Yoli and Huina blushed, and Alice, as the party concerned, was even more flustered. Please don't say this kind of thing in such a place. That is not the behavior of a gentleman. Alice glared at Noah and said loudly. Moreover, I am not here to be intimate with Sir Noah, but to talk about business. Is that so? Noah raised his eyebrows and ridiculed. In other words, after talking about business, we can be intimate, right? No. Alice fell into a state of confusion, which was rare for her. I didn't mean that. Seeing that Alice began to feel ashamed and angry, Noah, who felt that it was enough, smiled, reached out, and picked up the teacup on the table. After taking a sip of the hot tea, he went to the main topic. You are here to inquire about the god ancestor, Guinevere, right? Seeing that Noah went to the main topic, Alice could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. She looked at Noah with some resentment and said so. I came here because there is reliable information that Lord Guinevere came to this country. Moreover, when Sir Noah killed the great sage, Heaven's equal, she met with Sir Noah, right? If a conflict can be regarded as a meeting, then that is it. Noah continued to drink the hot tea and answered indifferently. However, in the end, it was right to let her escape. Even Sir Noah could not catch Lord Guinevere. Alice sighed. That's right. Even Alexander, who has the authority of seraphic speed, could not catch Lord Guinevere for so many years. It is not that easy to catch the god ancestor. Noah also nodded. Noah had confronted the god ancestor directly twice. The first time was when Perseus was killed by Noah. At that time, because the Holy Grail was taken away by Noah by some unknown means, Guinevere was already a little afraid of Noah. However, at that time, Guinevere actually had a trump card that made him not afraid of Noah. First, it was Lancelot. Although Lancelot was only the shadow of God, Noah had just become a god-slayer at that time. If he were to face Lancelot, he wouldn't be able to severely injure Lancelot as soon as they met. He would definitely be entangled with Lancelot. In this way, Guinevere could find a chance to escape. Secondly, Guinevere's arrowhead disc stored Perseus's steel. He could summon it and join forces with Lancelot to deal with Noah. If that was the case, Noah at that time was not without a way to win. After all, Noah had the knowledge of Lancelot and Perseus. He could use the warrior's sword of spiritual speech to take down the two gods of steel at the same time. The problem was that at that time, Noah undoubtedly had the knowledge of Lancelot, the Knight of the Lake, but there was no way to use the warrior's sword of spiritual speech. Because of this, Noah was vigilant and thought that things were not that simple, so he let Guinevere go. This time, Guinevere's arrowhead disc contained the steel of Perseus and the great sage, heaven's equal. If he joined forces with Lancelot to deal with Noah, Noah was not 100% confident that he could stop Guinevere without using his power. It could be seen that even though Guinevere was only a god ancestor, his trump cards were quite frightening. It was not easy to deal with him. Thinking of this, Noah could not help but ask. "Hey, Alice, is Lancelot really the Knight of the Lake?" Noah's question startled Alice at first, then she spoke in surprise. "Lord Noah, have you noticed Lancelot's real body?" "Real body?" Noah narrowed his eyes. In other words, this Lancelot is really not the Knight of the Lake under King Arthur in the Celtic mythology of Great Britain? Alice hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Now, there is nothing to hide. Yes, the Lancelot by Lord Guinevere's side is indeed not the famous Knight of the Lake, but an even more ancient existence." Saying this, Alice solemnly said, "Lord Noah, who do you think the last king is?" Chapter 1450. Alice's question made Noah, who was about to bring the teacup to his mouth, pause slightly. Who was the so-called last king? In fact, this problem should have appeared much earlier. However, Noah already had a guess about the identity of the last king. No matter who it is, as long as they know about the existence of the last king, they will call him the last king to appear in the world, which is the god that will appear in the apocalypse. Noah drank the hot tea in the teacup in his hand, put the teacup on the table, and looked straight at Alice. The gods that will appear in the apocalypse can be found in various mythological systems, but the king that Lancelot will worship is only that one, right? The legendary king of Great Britain, known as the King of Knights, King Arthur. Alice said the name that was quite familiar to everyone. That king does meet all the conditions. In the book, The Death of King Arthur, which recorded the legend of King Arthur, there was a very famous tombstone inscription. Hic Arthur, Rex Quandam Rex Futurus, King Arthur of the past and the future lies here. It meant that the legendary king would not stay in the past. The King of Knights would awaken in the future world and become a king again. This was not just a casual remark. In the legend of Great Britain in Celtic mythology, King Arthur was seriously injured in the last battle of his life. He was sent to Avalon, known as the Island of Fairies, and fell into a deep sleep to heal his injuries. In other words, in the myth, the King of Knights with the name of King Arthur did not die, but silently waited for the time to awaken. Therefore, many people who believed in King Arthur believed that one day, King Arthur would wake up in Avalon and descend upon this land again. Therefore, King Arthur was known as the king of the past and the future. In view of this, there were also people who advocated that when King Arthur returned to the world, it was likely to be the day of the apocalypse. At that time, as the king of legends, this king would save the world, save mankind, and restore peace to the world. In other words, King Arthur fully met the criteria of being the last king to appear in the world. In addition, the knight named Lancelot called the last king as his master. Guinevere, who used to be the goddess of earth and was King Arthur's wife in Celtic mythology, was also pursuing the last king. It was natural that King Arthur would be regarded as the last king. However, if this Lancelot isn't Lancelot, the Knight of the Lake in Celtic mythology, then the inference that the last king is King Arthur needs to be verified. At this moment, knowledge that matched the characteristics and nature of the last king flashed through Noah's mind. Noah rubbed his forehead. And if the last king is not King Arthur, then it would be a little difficult to find out who this god, the natural enemy of the god slayers, is. Just as Lord Noah said. Alice nodded. Because Lancelot's identity is a mystery, the true identity of the last king is also difficult to know. So, you also don't know the true identity of the last king? Noah frowned. Including Lancelot's true identity? Although it's very embarrassing, not only me, but also many famous witches, and even Alexander, who has been pursuing the Holy Grail and exploring the secrets of the last king, don't know the true identity of the two. Alice said. I'm afraid that Lord Noah doesn't know that whether it is King Arthur, the Knight of the Lake, or even the origin of the entire British legend, in fact, it was fabricated by Lord Guinevere. You. What did you say? Noah was shocked. You said fabricated? Fabricated myths? Yes. Alice seemed to want to emphasize the authenticity of her words and nodded heavily. We can be sure that the existence of King Arthur and even the myths related to him are all fabricated by Lord Guinevere. With that said, Alice began to explain. As everyone knew, the true form of the gods was actually the myth itself. If the gods that originally only existed in myths violated their own myths and appeared on earth, then this god would become the body of a rebel and be swallowed by madness, becoming a god of disobedience. There were myths, and then there were gods. Therefore, the gods that had appeared so far were all famous figures known by the world. And if there were no myths, there would naturally be no gods that didn't exist. For example, the great sage. If there was no such super famous figure in Journey to the West, the world would not know of this figure's existence, then this god would definitely not appear out of thin air and descend on earth. Since ancient times, there have been thousands of myths born through the hands of human beings. Naturally, there is no lack of myths that suddenly disappeared or suddenly changed, Alice explained. And if the myths change, then the nature of the gods will also change. That is the law that the gods who are myths can never get rid of. Noah nodded in agreement. Take Athena for example. She was originally the queen of the divine realm who ruled the Mediterranean mythology. Later, the feminist society was denied, and the era of male sovereignty came. The myths were changed by men, and Athena, the queen of the divine realm, was degraded. At this point, the divinity of the Trinity queen of the divine realm was divided, and they became the wife of Zeus in Greek mythology, Metis, and her daughter Athena. The snake part became Medusa, and she was directly degraded to a banshee and was spurned by people. Fortunately, the myth of Athena as the queen of the Mediterranean had not completely disappeared. Therefore, Athena still had a chance to restore her identity as the queen of the Trinity and once again rule the divine realm. But if a myth is completely changed, then the identity of the god at the center of this myth will also be completely changed, Alice pondered for a moment and then said. For example, there is a military god who is worshipped as the strongest knight in the world, but he was not like this 1,000 years ago. If that god were to descend tomorrow, he would descend as the strongest knight in the present myth. But, if he were to descend more than 1,000 years ago, then this god will be the divinity of 1,000 years ago when the myth was still changed. Noah raised his head and looked at Alice. Is this the case for Lancelot? Yes, he is a god who appeared 1,000 years ago. The myths that were closely related to him during the past 1,000 years have been lost. They have been changed into the myth of Lancelot, the Knight of the Lake, which has been widely passed down. Alice met Noah's gaze. And the person who did this is Lord Guinevere. It was said that the current Guinevere was actually the reincarnation of the second generation. As the goddess of the earth, after Guinevere created the Holy Grail, at the cost of her immortal life, the first generation of godly ancestor Guinevere was born. After that, the first generation of Guinevere was killed on the journey to find the last king. After a few hundred years, she was reincarnated and became the current Guinevere. In order to let the last king descend, the first generation of Lord Guinevere chose a shortcut. Alice's eyes flickered. That is, to weave a legend similar to the last king into a myth and then spread it out. After the myth was formed, like Marquis Warban, he used a ritual to summon the last king, That myth is the legend of King Arthur? Noah said with some surprise and some emotion. That is to say, King Arthur's prototype is the last king? That's right. For this reason, the first generation of Lord Guinevere also added Guinevere and Lancelot, who served the last king, into the myth and became King Arthur's concubine and minister, Alice said with a sigh. It's a pity that before the myth could take shape and the summoning ritual could begin, the first Lord Guinevere died and was only reincarnated a few hundred years later. During these few hundred years, this myth had deviated from the norm and was rewoven and tampered with by many people. In the end, King Arthur was born and became an independent myth. He also became a brand new god, a similar but different existence with the last king as the prototype. Alice picked up the teacup and quenched her thirst after a long explanation. At the same time, the myth of Lancelot was also changed. He became the Knight of the Lake in the legend of Great Britain. His real body was buried in the long river of history. That was why Noah couldn't use the sword of words on Lancelot. Because this Lancelot was not the Knight of the Lake that Noah knew. Therefore, the so-called last king was also not King Arthur. Because King Arthur's original form was the real last king. The huge amount of information made Noah close his eyes slightly. After pondering for a while, he opened them again and said to Alice. Then, do you know that the god known as the last king is sleeping in this country? You. What did you say? Alice finally lost her voice. Chapter 1451. At this time, among the 4 people present, except for Noah, Alice, Yoli, and Huina's expressions all changed. Alice was shocked because of the unexpected news. Yoli and Huina were surprised. Unlike Alice, Yoli and Huina didn't know what kind of existence the so-called last king was. However, from the conversation between Noah and Alice just now, the 2 witches at least understood some things. For example, the so-called last king was a very dangerous and powerful god. Otherwise, even Guinevere and Lancelot wouldn't worship him, and Black Prince Yarek had been pursuing this mystery. Another example was that the so-called last king was a god that would appear in the end of the world. Although they didn't know what the end of the world was, if the arrival of a god was based on such a condition, then it would be terrible. After all, the appearance of a god that didn't obey was generally accompanied by disasters brought about by his own attributes. If the sun god appeared, the whole world may be attacked by high temperature. If the sea god appeared, the whole world may be submerged by tsunamis. If this so-called last king was the last king to appear in the world, then did that mean that when this god appeared, it would bring about disasters of the same nature? For example, the end of the world. If the god sleeping in this country was such an existence, then why did the elders in secluded world try their best to conceal the existence of such a dangerous god, and even summoned the great sage, heavens equal to heaven, to slay the dragon and the snake? The reason was completely clear. How could this be? Yoli said with some disbelief. Why would such a dangerous god be sleeping in this country? Grandpa and the others have been hiding the god. Is this last king? Even Huina said with some wry smile. It feels like things have become troublesome all of a sudden. As for Alice, she had recovered from her shock. She stood up abruptly and peered her pretty face in Noah's direction. She exclaimed with a face full of surprise. Is this news true? Noah couldn't help but laugh when he saw Alice's face, which was filled with surprise, suddenly appear in front of him. Although I only heard about it from others, based on what I've encountered so far, this news should be absolutely true. Hearing this, Alice's expression suddenly became absent-minded. I didn't expect that the last king was actually in this country. Then, Alice cheered up. Great, it was right to come here. Alexander definitely didn't know this news. In this way, I'm one step ahead. That guy will definitely be angry. As said before, in addition to being a god slayer, Black Prince Yerek was also an adventurer and explorer. Yerek's father had been pursuing the Holy Grail all his life. Even when he died of exhaustion, he still couldn't achieve his goal. Using this as an opportunity, Yerek embarked on the path of searching for the Holy Grail. Because of this, he coincidentally became a god slayer, completely opening the path of adventure and exploration. For this guy, the last king that Guinevere had been searching for was definitely a puzzle that could stimulate the greatest curiosity in his heart. Therefore, while looking for the Holy Grail, Yerek had been trying to solve the mystery of the last king. The former Guinevere tried to summon the last king by fabricating a myth, but the result was that he gave up halfway. The truth that led to the appearance of the legend of King Arthur was solved by Yerek. However, Yerek had never solved the real body and whereabouts of the last king. He could only find some clues. Alice couldn't help but feel excited when she thought about finding the whereabouts of the last king before her enemy. There's no time to lose. I have to quickly arrange for people to find the real sleeping place of the last king in this country. Otherwise, with Alexander's cunning, it won't be long before he finds out that the last king is in this island country. With such a sentence, Alice immediately got up, turned around, and prepared to run out without thinking. However, before that, Noah also got up and grabbed Alice's hand. Wait! Alice, who didn't expect that Noah would suddenly grab her, suddenly lost her balance and exclaimed. Following the strength of Noah's hand, she fell in the direction of Noah. Seeing this, Noah almost subconsciously reached out and hugged Alice, who fell into his arms. Wow, this time, even Yoli and Hui Na exclaimed and opened their eyes wide. Huh! Alice, on the other hand, couldn't react in time. When she felt the warmth of Noah's chest and the strength of his arm around her waist, her pretty face blushed slightly. Seeing the scene of Alice falling into his arms with a red face, Noah was amused. He reached out and pinched Alice's delicate little nose. I say, no matter what, you are a senior who is a few years older than me. Can't you act a little more like an elder? Don't be so reckless. Otherwise, your title of princess will cry. Being treated by Noah with such an intimate action, Alice's face became even redder, and she retorted with an extremely unnatural look. No. No such thing. This is a very calm judgment. Since we know that the last king is on this island, then of course we have to find him as soon as possible. If it was so easy to find, then you wouldn't have to search for the last king for so many years. Noah said snappily. Besides, in this country, there is a group of old people who have lived in seclusion for who knows how many years. All these years, in order to hide the whereabouts of the last king, they have put in a lot of effort. In this way, how can it be so easy to find? The elders who live in seclusion? Alice was slightly startled and frowned. They hid the whereabouts of the last king? Most likely. Noah shrugged. So, it's better that you don't rashly start a search in this country. Otherwise, if you are entangled by that group of arrogant old people, you will be annoyed to death. Even if you want to search, you can't let the Sage Council do the search. After all, this is the territory of the Official History Compilation Committee. That's right. Hui Na nodded quickly. It should be the committee that does the search. But, such a dangerous existence. Why do we have to find it? Yoli stepped forward and made his own voice. Since the last king is so dangerous, let him continue to sleep and prevent others from waking him up. That's what we should do, right? How can that be? Alice immediately retorted. Then wouldn't it be not interesting at all? This sentence made Yoli and Hui Na dumbfounded. Interesting? Noah couldn't help but cover his face. This Alice, she actually exposed her true nature. Ugh. Alice only then reacted and smiled a little embarrassedly. I mean, there is no way to deal with Lord Guinevere and Alexander in this way, right? Only by taking control of the information first can we make the next move. Is that so? Yoli and Huina looked at each other. However, the two witches still chose to believe in Europe's best woman and were deceived by Alice's obedient girl mask. At this time, Yoli's pretty face was slightly red, and she said with some anger. By the way, how long are you two going to hug each other? Isn't it too indecent to do this kind of behavior on this occasion? You are the Devil King and the Princess. Yoli's words made Noah and Alice react. The two were still hugging each other tightly. At the moment, Noah smiled awkwardly and let go of the hand around Alice's slender waist. Alice jumped away as if she had been bounced off. She also had an awkward expression on her face. At this time, Noah's mobile phone rang, interrupting the awkward atmosphere at the scene. Noah breathed a sigh of relief, took out his mobile phone from his arms, and picked up the phone. The next second, a valiant voice sounded from the mobile phone. Our king, as your knights, we have come to your side. Are you not going to pick us up? Noah's eyes lit up. Chapter 1452. This was a bustling airport with people coming and going. Although the location was some distance away from the hotel of the Western Heaven Palace, this airport was the closest airport nearby. In this bustling airport, Noah, Yoli, and Huina stayed in a corner. The people around them were all locals who came to pick them up. As the people who got off the plane arrived one by one, the people who came to pick them up also enthusiastically laughed and chatted with each other. They walked to the exit of the airport hand in hand. It was very lively. Noah, Yoli, and Huina also came to pick them up. Because of the bustling airport with people coming and going, Yoli naturally did not wear the witch costume anymore. Instead, she changed into a white hooded coat and dark gray trousers. Huina was still wearing the student uniform from an unknown school. She even carried the long cloth bag with the katana on her shoulder. Both girls obediently stayed about a step behind Noah, occupying the left and right sides like followers. However, the people they were going to pick up now were Noah's followers in the truest sense. Miss Erica and Miss Liliana? Yoli murmured. It is said that the two are prodigies of Italy. They are genius knights who achieved the rank of a Grand Knight at a young age. At the same time, they are also followers that the king got after becoming a god slayer. Huina smiled with some expectation. I'm really curious about what kind of people the king's followers are. While saying such a sentence, a strong competitive spirit emerged in Huina's eyes. It was the manifestation of fighting spirit when it was aroused. It seemed that Huina was not curious about what kind of people Erica and Liliana were, but what level of power they had. It was an extremely pure martial arts style. Noah, who did not notice this, looked ahead and spread his hands. If I were to describe what kind of people they are, I can only say that they are two very eye-catching people in various senses. At this moment, the noise in the entire airport suddenly weakened. Noah, Yoli, and Huina, who were talking, raised their heads at the same time and looked forward in surprise. Soon after, the three of them understood why the sound around them had suddenly weakened. Because in the airport, almost everyone turned their eyes in one direction, as if attracted by something, and subconsciously shut their mouths. Noah, Yoli, and Huina immediately turned their gazes and looked in the direction where everyone was looking. Over there were two young girls taking strong and forceful steps. Under the gazes of everyone present, they slowly walked over. I say, Erica, it's about time you picked up your pace. Who knows when you'll reach your destination if you keep walking like that? You're still so inflexible, Lily. It's rare to come to a country that you've never been to before. Shouldn't you take a good look at the surroundings first? That kind of thing can be done in the future. There's no need to specially do it now, right? You're right, but we don't seem to have a reason to be in a hurry. Anyway, the king must be living a better life than us. It doesn't make a difference whether we arrive earlier or later. It's not a matter of ability, but a matter of loyalty and responsibility. Although I know you've always lacked such sentiments, that's the king we serve after all. It's a dereliction of duty if you don't rush to the person you need to be loyal to as soon as possible. You say so, but in fact, you're in such a hurry because you can't help but want to see the king as soon as possible, right? No, no such thing. Do you think you can make me waver by saying such words? I won't be affected by you. Lily, before you say that, shouldn't you think about your own performance? Is your voice trembling? The beautiful voice like that of a mighty lioness and the mournful voice kept ringing, frequently attracting the attention of the surrounding people. A young girl with waist-length golden hair that was resplendent like a crown and a young girl with long silver ponytail like a fairy in the night. One of them had a majestic smile. The other looked a little flustered. Both of them walked forward in the space under the gazes of thousands of people as if there was no one else around them. As the two young girls were conversing in Italian, the people here basically didn't know what kind of conversation they were having. But in any case, in terms of appearance alone, Erica and Liliana had strong capital to attract attention, making the bustling crowd in the airport quiet down a lot all of a sudden. A beautiful blonde girl and a beautiful silver-haired girl. For the people in this country, such two foreign beauties were definitely enough to shock them. Not to mention, the two girls were both people with great temperament. One was confident and gorgeous, while the other was awe-inspiring and rigorous. In various senses, they were existences that could attract the attention of others. Judging from this point of view, although Yuri and Keiko had looks that weren't inferior to the two young girls, they didn't have the kind of eye-catching high-profile temperament. Instead, they tended to be low-key like Yamato Nadeshiko. Therefore, for Yuri and Keiko, Erica and Liliana were the kind of people who were quite dazzling. It was precisely because she considered that they would be so eye-catching that Alice didn't come with them. Instead, she stayed in the hotel. If the princess, who was known as the most outstanding woman in Europe, came to the airport in person, she would definitely become the most eye-catching existence in this airport, right? Even extremely dazzling people like Erica and Liliana couldn't compare. Of course, for others, Yuri and Keiko were the kind of people who were quite sophisticated. Under such circumstances, the two young girls, who were talking and walking as if there was no one else around, met Noah's eyes in the next moment. Both Erica and Liliana were slightly taken aback at this moment. Then, one of the two young girls showed an even more gorgeous smile, while the other regained her righteous expression. In the clear sound of footsteps, Erica and Liliana came in front of Noah. "Your Majesty," Liliana said in a serious tone. Liliana Kranikar has now returned. She was as serious as ever. "And me, Erica Browntree." The gorgeous smile on Erica's face didn't change in the slightest. "We haven't seen each other for a month, Your Majesty. Although I'm looking forward to hearing some touching words of reunion from you, I know that you're not the kind of person who is very emotional at all times, so I won't ask for anything." Erica was as confident and gorgeous as ever. The two knights, who had traveled with Noah for nearly half a year, finally returned to Noah's side again. Just as Erica said, Noah wasn't the kind of person who was very emotional at all times. Therefore, Noah could only smile bitterly and shrug at the two knights' announcement of their return in different styles. "Although that's the case, the timing of your return isn't too good. I reckon that you'll be involved in a big dispute all of a sudden." "If that's the case, it should be said that the timing is right," Erica said with a smile. "Appearing on the best stage is proof that even God doesn't intend to deprive me, Erica Browntree, of the opportunity to perform. No matter what the occasion is, my duty is to protect Your Majesty," Liliana said with a determined expression and tone. "As long as I can fulfill my duty, no matter what the occasion is, it'll be a good opportunity for me." A night full of confidence and a night full of honesty. Although the two knights spoke in different ways, the meaning behind their words was that they were willing to accompany Noah through mountains of swords and seas of fire. This made Noah feel helpless, but at the same time, the corners of his mouth unconsciously lifted slightly. At that moment, Hui Na, who was standing beside Noah, said with a sweet smile. As expected of your Majesty's official follower. Your words are so bold that even Hui Na is impressed. Hearing Hui Na's words, Erica and Liliana fixed their eyes on her. At that moment, no one expected that. This was the beginning of the dispute between the followers of your Majesty. Chapter 1453. Noah didn't know if it was his illusion or not. However, Noah did feel it. At this moment, the surrounding atmosphere suddenly became tense. The knight from Italy and the witch from Japan looked at each other, and there were some sparks in their eyes at the same time. Hui Na stared at Erica and Liliana, and the smile on her pretty face was more or less different from usual. It was as if she was evaluating something, sizing up something, examining something, and confirming something. Looking at Erica and Liliana, Hui Na said with both shock and admiration. Hui Na can clearly feel it. Whether it is Miss Erica or Miss Liliana, although they are both very beautiful girls on the outside, they have a tempered aura. They are definitely not easy to deal with. Hearing Hui Na's words, Erica and Liliana looked at each other, and then looked at Hui Na again. We have heard about you. I remember your name is Qingxiu Courtyard's Hui Na, right? Erica accepted Hui Na's evaluation in an upright manner, and also glanced at Yuri, who had a blank look on his face as if he didn't know what was going on. And you are Wanragu Yuri. Both of you are the witches of the Japanese magic world, and the followers of our king arranged by the History Compilation Committee, right? Yes. Yes. Yuri quickly saluted. I am Wanragu Yuri, nice to meet you. I am Liliana Kranikar, belonging to the Bronze Black Cross of Milan, Italy. Liliana nodded politely. During this period of time, thank you for taking care of our king. We sincerely apologize to you for the trouble he has caused. Hey. What do you mean by the trouble I have caused? Noah felt that he should speak up. I know my place, okay? The word know your place is really not a compliment when used on a god slayer. Liliana immediately retorted. Besides, I heard everything from Erica. It is said that the great sage, Heaven's Equal, was released by our king. Isn't that true? Noah was at a loss for words. Because you released the great sage, Heaven's Equal, not only did god ancestor Ganivia come to this country, even the Black Prince and sect leader Luo Hao came. Liliana sighed. It was the same when you were in Italy. You made your debut by killing two of the highest level gods of disobedience. Then, you met Athena. Using this as an opportunity, you attracted Marquis Warban, Archbishop Luo Hao, and Salvatore. When you were in Naples, you got entangled with the Black Prince, Lancelot, and Perseus. It seems that in terms of the attractiveness of being a king, you have indeed surpassed the rest of your kind. Wasn't that right? At present, there were only 7 godslayers. There were only 7 godslayers among the billions of people on Earth. However, every time Noah got involved in a dispute, he would attract more than 2 or 3 of his kind. Gods were as numerous as the stars in the sky. However, there were not many gods of disobedience on the ground. Otherwise, veteran godslayers like Warban and Luo Hao would have killed an astonishing number of gods, and the number of authorities they would have obtained would have reached an unimaginable level. The reason why this did not happen was that most of the gods were easy to defeat but difficult to kill, and it was also because the gods of disobedience on the ground did not matter much. Under such circumstances, every time Noah got involved in a dispute, there would be at least 2 or 3 gods of disobedience. He was really an anomaly. In this regard, Noah had nothing to say. Fortunately, Liliana did not know that Luo Hao had been completely devoured by Noah. Otherwise, this innocent but delusional knight would have exploded long ago. Erica, on the other hand, looked natural and unrestrained. Lily, you can't blame our king too much. Just like how beautiful girls attract bees and butterflies, individuals with great power will only be attracted by great power. From this point of view, doesn't it prove that our king is more outstanding than the other godslayers? I'm not denying that our king is outstanding. Liliana shook her head. I'm just lamenting that our king's life has always been so turbulent. Indeed. Erica looked at Noah with a faint smile. It's naturally a good thing for a man to be capable, but for a woman who is attracted to such a man, it will be quite difficult. I hope our king won't make too many girls cry in the future. The corners of Noah's mouth twitched, and he felt like his sore spot had been poked. At this moment, Hui Na expressed a different opinion. Is that so? But Hui Na prefers men like our king who don't bring too much boredom. Erica and Liliana were both taken aback by his words. As for Yoli, he was frightened by Hui Na's bold confession, and he pulled Hui Na's clothes with a blush on his face. Hui Na, what are you talking about? Hui Na is just telling the truth. Yoli won't like that kind of boring man, right? Hui Na said to Yoli as if it was a matter of course. Then, she clapped her hands as if she had thought of a good idea. However, if Miss Erica and Miss Liliana don't like our king, it doesn't matter. Hui Na will be our king's attendant anyway. It doesn't matter if Miss Erica and Miss Liliana are there or not. I'll repeat what I said here. Although Hui Na had received the education of a lady from a noble family, she was a natural girl who grew up in nature. Such a girl, even if she was the next head of the Meitio courtyard family, one of the 4 leading families in the Japanese magic circle, naturally didn't know anything about intrigue. Therefore, Hui Na's words were just pure thoughts in her heart. There was no malice in her words. However, in the ears of Erica and Liliana, this sentence was naturally full of provocation. Not to mention Erica and Liliana, even Yoli was a little surprised. Noah was also slightly taken aback. You're called Meitio Courtyard's Hui Na, right? Liliana frowned and looked straight at Hui Na. I can't pretend that I didn't hear what you said just now. Do you mean that I'm no longer of any use to our king? Huh? Hui Na didn't say that. Hui Na said with some confusion. Hui Na just said that both Miss Erica and Miss Liliana are great people. Hui Na can clearly feel this. However, you also said that if you're by our king's side, it doesn't matter whether we're there or not, right? Erica raised her eyebrows and put on an imposing smile like a lion. Can I take it that you're saying that you alone can beat me and Lily? Upon hearing this, Hui Na blinked and suddenly smiled. Actually, Hui Na doesn't know, but Miss Erica and Miss Liliana don't give Hui Na a sense of danger, so that should be it. You. Liliana immediately wanted to step forward, but was stopped by Erica. Erica stared at Hui Na intently, and at the next moment, she suddenly smiled. I, Erica Brantley, have never been looked down upon like this since I was born. It's really a fresh feeling for me. But, Miss Huina, it's not up to you to judge a person's ability. Erica Brantley said. Erica's words made Hui Na's eyes light up, and the smile on her face became wider and more enthusiastic. In other words, Miss Erica, are you going to spar with Hui Na? Hui Na. Yoli finally panicked. Noah finally frowned, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he watched quietly from the side. Under such circumstances, Erica shrugged her shoulders. Exchanging swords is also a knight's etiquette. I also want to confirm if Miss Hui Na is qualified to be our king's temporary attendant. Hui Na has no objections, Hui Na replied immediately. I'm willing to accompany you anytime. The battle between the attendants was successfully ignited. Chapter 1454. Whoosh. A whistling gust of wind blew past, stirring up a cloud of sand and dust. In an open space in the suburbs not far from the airport, Erica and Hui Na were facing each other with a distance between them. Both young ladies had smiles on their faces. However, that smile showed that the two girls had completely different temperaments. The smile on Erica's pretty face was naturally an extremely gorgeous and confident smile. On the other hand, the smile on Hui Na's pretty face was so innocent. However, no one could clearly see the scorching battle intent contained in their smiles. Whoosh! Another gust of wind blew past with a whistling sound, causing Erica and Hui Na's waist-length hair to sway up and down, making them look rather casual and unrestrained. Not far from the two of them, Noah, Yoli, and Liliana stood side by side as they stared at the two of them in a standoff. "Why didn't you stop them?" Yoli questioned Noah. "If it's your order, Miss Erica and Huina should have obeyed." "No, you're wrong, Wanli-gu," Liliana answered before Noah could. "Even if it's the king's order, those two probably won't obey. After all, although one of them is a knight and the other is a witch, they are still warriors at heart." Noah stared at Erica and Huina, who were in a standoff. "Even if I stop them, it will only slow down the burning of the tinder. It's better to get rid of them once and for all." But, Yoli said anxiously. "What if those two are injured?" "Don't worry," Noah answered directly. "Not to mention injuries, even if they lose their arms, legs, or even their lives, I have a way to make them recover instantly." "Is that so?" Liliana was a little surprised. "When did you master that kind of power?" Upon hearing that, Noah glanced at Liliana in exasperation. "When you didn't know." Naturally, this answer was not enough to make Liliana give up. However, before Liliana could launch her attack, Erica and Huina seemed to be tired of the confrontation and broke the silence. "The Steel Lion and the Lionheart King, as my ancestor, hear the oath of Knight Erica Brantley. I am the successor of the Horn Flute, the descendant of the Black Warrior. My heart will not yield, my sword will never break. O Lionheart King, the essence of struggle is now in my hands. The time for the duel has come, Lionheart King." Amidst the awe-inspiring voice, a light knight's sword that resembled a western sword flashed out of the radiance of spells and landed in Erica's hand. "Is that Miss Erica's weapon?" Huina's expression didn't change. She just untied the cloth bag on her shoulder, opened the bag, and slowly pulled out a sharp katana. "Then I'll use this to fight." Looking at the katana in Huina's hand, Erica said provocatively. "That doesn't seem to be a particularly powerful weapon." Erica's Lion King's heart wasn't an ordinary weapon. It was a magic sword forged with special alchemy steel and other magic mediums. This sword had an attribute called indestructible. No matter how it was destroyed, Erica could restore it in an instant. Whether it was sharpness or power, it wouldn't decrease in the slightest. Moreover, it could cut through iron like mud. On the other hand, although the katana in Huina's hand was quite famous, it wasn't a weapon that even people in the magic and spell world would be amazed by. It can't be helped. Huina's original katana was destroyed by the king because it offended him. Huina can only use this. Huina pointed the tip of the katana at Erica from afar, maintaining a smile on her face. "But this is enough. Anyway, my opponent is only Miss Erica." "Is that so?" Erica's eyes glinted. "Then I don't need to show any mercy." The moment she finished speaking, a surge of spell power surged from Erica's body. Fly, Boots of Hermes, a magic square array shrouded in red light spun out from the ground under Erica's feet. As if it had become a propelling force, Erica's figure turned into an afterimage and shot towards Huina. It was a magic trick called Leap. It was a magic trick that could make one's body extremely light and even make one jump by stepping on air. After using this magic trick, Erica's body became extremely light and nimble. As soon as she stepped on the ground, she arrived in front of Huina in a flash like a slender bolt of lightning. Immediately after, the demonic sword in Erica's hand, which was called the Heart of the Lion King, drew a straight arc with a fierce force and pierced towards Huina's face. In the face of this fierce attack, Huina just narrowed her eyes and stared at the tip of the sword that was getting closer and closer. When the tip of Lion King's heart was less than 10 centimeters away from Huina, Huina suddenly raised the katana in her hand and performed a sword draw slash. Clang! The steel sword and the katana collided in mid-air, causing a crisp sound and a burst of sparks. However, at this moment, the corners of Erica's mouth curled up. She shook the Lion King's heart in her hand and suddenly thrust it out. Chi! The sharp magic sword cut through the air, bringing with it a cold light. However, there was not only one cold light, but three. They formed a triangle and pierced toward Hui Na at the same time with cold arcs of light. Wow! Miss Erica is so powerful. In the face of Erica's attack, Hui Na first cried out in surprise, and then she quickly took 2 steps back. She clenched the Tai Dao in her hand tightly, and without the slightest fanciness, she let her strength surge into the blade and slashed down at the 3 sword lights that were thrusting at her. Swish! It was a simple slash, but it brought with it a bright saber light. Like a waterfall falling from the sky, it tore through the air and heavily hacked at the 3 brilliant sword lights. Bang! Accompanied by a low explosion, the 3 cold lights were shattered by the saber light at the same time, shattering like glass in the air. However, this scene made Hui Na's face turn solemn. Since the 3 sword lights had exploded, there could only be one meaning. The real attack was not in the 3 sword lights. Whoosh! Indeed, a sharp demonic sword shot out like lightning from behind the 3 sword glows that had exploded like glass. It drew a straight trajectory and shot out like an arrow that had left a bow. Seeing this, even Hui Na did not dare to underestimate Erica's sword attack. She quickly raised the katana in her hand and collided with Erica's magic sword. Clang! After the crisp sound of metal clashing, the figures of the 2 girls holding the magic sword and the katana began to intertwine. Clang! 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 The knight from Italy and the witch from Japan seemed to have turned into 2 dancing phantoms at this moment. They intertwined in the open space like ghosts, and their sabers and swords mercilessly slashed at each other's bodies. Clang! 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 The sword light and the saber light repeatedly collided with each other, causing intense sparks to fly everywhere. Every time they collided, it would set off waves of sharp strength chi. It was like an invisible waterfall that landed on the surrounding open space one after another, leaving cuts on the surface. Noah, Yoli, and Liliana's eyes were all focused on the 2 figures that intertwined like ghosts and swung their swords at each other. Their eyes did not move from the beginning to the end, not even for a moment. In such a situation, Yoli was so worried that he even twisted his hands together. Liliana's face turned solemn, and she whispered, Hui Na of the Qingxiu Academy can actually use swordsmanship that is on par with Erica's. Her strength is really powerful. Erica probably can't do anything to her with swordsmanship alone. She can only use magic to determine the winner. Noah, who clearly heard Liliana's words, did not say anything on the surface, but he shook his head in his heart. Liliana's statement was correct. However, that was under normal circumstances. If Erica used magic, Hui Na would also use her trump card. It was a foul secret skill called God Descends. Chapter 1455. Clang. The sound of metal clashing and the bursting sparks were still reverberating in the space. Under the gaze of Noah, Yoli, and Liliana, Erica and Hui Na were carrying out an attack and defense that only masters of swordsmanship could do. The 2 sides exchanged blows, and the situation in the field was neck and neck. As Liliana said, Erica and Hui Na's attainments in swordsmanship were basically the same, so the 2 girls' attacks and defenses were quite perfect. However, that was only the current situation. Except for Liliana, Noah and Yoli both knew that Hui Na was still hiding her trump card. The secret technique named, Invite God to Descend, was a power that could even drive the personal disciple of the king of Wuxia, the best martial artist in the world, into desperation. Even Erica, who was known as a prodigy, probably couldn't deal with it, could she? After all, it was a skill that could borrow the power of the gods. Even if the borrowed power was only a few 10,000ths, it was still not something that humans could resist. Without the power comparable to that of a mythical beast or a god ancestor, it was impossible to resist. In Europe, knights with this level of power enjoyed the highest honor of paladin. This rank was only 1 level higher than Grand Knight, but the gap between the 2 was like heaven and earth. For example, it was not strange for a person with the title of paladin to kill a mythical beast or a god ancestor, but the existence of Grand Knight could barely cope with it. Previously, in Italy, Noah and his companions had encountered many mythical beasts. At that time, even if Erica and Liliana joined forces, it was still very difficult to deal with a mythical beast. Now, Erica was alone facing Witch Yuan, who could exert the power comparable to that of a mythical beast at any time. Of course, as long as one was aware of the situation, no one would be confused by the evenly matched competition in front of them. Therefore, the current situation was only temporary. Next, it was the real beginning. Just as Noah was thinking about this, the situation in the field changed immediately. Clang! With a loud collision sound of a saber and a sword, Erica and Hui Na were both shaken to a distance by each other's strength. They raised their weapons and pointed at each other, resuming the confrontation. Miss Erica is really powerful. Hui Na's expression was still calm, but the smile on her pretty face became much sharper than before. Hui Na's feeling is right. You're also powerful. You deserve to be the next head of the Qingxiu courtyard, Erica replied with ease. You do have the ability to be our king's follower. But if that's the case, the words that you said to replace me and Lily aren't convincing enough. You're right. Hui Na nodded generously. Well then, Hui Na, we need to get serious. With that said, an indescribable aura began to spread from Hui Na's body. I am willing to use this body as a sacrifice, please appease the spirit of frenzy. The solemn spirit of words reverberated in the air with Hui Na's lovely voice as a medium. Qin Pe, God Zi Yuan Mao, can surpass, today, my name, I regret not, at this moment, a power that made humans shudder slowly rose from Hui Na's delicate body like an invisible wave. Sensing that power, the confident smile on Erica's face finally faded bit by bit. Not to mention Erica, even Yuri and Liliana who were watching on the sidelines reacted to it. Is that the aura of God? Liliana was shocked. Could it be that Hui Na of the Qingxiu courtyard can borrow the power of God? That Witch Yuan actually has the aptitude for the God-vanquishing spell? By becoming a witch who served God, she could borrow the power of God and let a small part of God's power reside in her body. She would become God's emissary and wield the power of God. This kind of existence also existed in Europe. The magic world in Europe called this kind of existence a spiritualist, and the magic they used to borrow the power of God was called the God-vanquishing spell. In other words, it was the same kind of existence as Hui Na. However, in Europe, there had not been a spiritualist who could use the God-vanquishing spell for many years. There was actually such a rare talent in Japan's magic world. Feeling the power gradually rising from Hui Na's body, Erica's hand holding the sword tightened slightly. This is a bit troublesome. Even Erica, who had always been confident and flamboyant, could not help but admit that it was troublesome. One could imagine how surprised and dignified she was. It seems that if I don't take out my trump card, I can't win. Without any hesitation, Erica let the cursed power in her body burn like a flame and wildly surge out of her body. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, Lord, why have you forsaken me? Erica suddenly raised the Lion King's heart to the sky and chanted loudly in an awe-inspiring voice. It was the spirit of words used to free Erica Branturi's strongest magic. Lord, I call during the day, but you don't answer. When I call during the night, you are silent. But you are the God who has become a saint and has been baptized by the many hymns of Israel. Undoubtedly, it was a spirit of words chanted loudly in an awe-inspiring voice. But the spirit of words contained an extremely strong sense of despair, shaking the air. At this moment, the surrounding temperature began to plummet at an alarming speed. My bones are all decaying and collapsing, my heart has turned into wax, and my body has dissolved in it. Please abandon me in the dust of death, dogs surround me, and I will be abused by evildoers. Loneliness. Despair. Confusion. Curse. The spirit of words with all kinds of negative emotions that could make humans die filled every corner of the surrounding space along with Erica's voice, causing the temperature in this space to drop continuously until it reached a bone-chilling level. Become my power, grant me help as soon as possible. Save my soul from the sword, save me from the lion's teeth, save me from the horn of a buffalo." A pitch-black whirlwind gathered on the sword that Erica raised to the sky and gradually spun. However, it was not real wind, but a curse materialized in the form of wind. "Let me tell you the name of the Lord. Praise him at the center of the world, convert and dedicate him." An explosive power surged from Erica's body. At this moment, the magic that Erica was using was called Calvary's Spirit of Words. It was a spell of despair and longing for redemption that ancient saints poured out to God before their deaths. It was a secret ritual that enjoyed the title of combat magic in Europe. When using this magic, just hearing the spirit of words chanted by the caster would blind the average person, and the physically weak would directly collapse. If the caster had the intention, she could even curse and kill everyone present who heard the spirit of words that contained the power of despair. Therefore, the moment Erica's spirit of words sounded, Liliana increased the spell power in her body to resist the despair and curse that came with it. Yoli's body stiffened, but Noah pulled her into his arms to prevent her from being affected by the spirit of words of despair. Huina widened her eyes slightly. Then, her eyes finally surged with excitement. "That's amazing, Miss Erica. I didn't expect you to have such a trump card." Huina already feels threatened. That wasn't just a casual remark. The combat magic called Calvary's Spirit of Words had the power to inflict a certain degree of damage to gods and godslayers. It was the highest level of secret ritual that paladins below the rank of paladins could use. "Okay." Huina's smile turned a little sinister. Huina won't hold back. As if intending to compete with the pitch-black whirlwind, a gray storm surged out of Huina's body. The storm of black and gray instantly swept across the field. On one side was a curse that could inflict a certain degree of damage to gods. On the other side was the power of wind that borrowed the power of gods to wield. The two storms wreaked havoc in the suburbs and expanded to the peak when Erica and Huina aimed their weapons at each other. If the two girls clashed directly like this, it would definitely cause a huge impact. Under such circumstances, even Liliana couldn't stand it anymore. She hurriedly spoke to Noah. "Your Majesty, please stop them. It's too dangerous if this continues." Indeed. Both Erica and Huina were no longer holding back. They had brought out their strongest trump cards. Next, no matter what the outcome was, Erica and Huina would definitely be severely injured to varying degrees. It was even possible that one of them would directly die. Although Noah had a way to resurrect Erica and Huina, that wasn't a reason for him to sit back and watch his companions die. Therefore, Noah, who felt that it was about time, nodded immediately. He reached out his hand and let the golden ripples spread out like water ripples around him. It was at this moment that something unexpected happened. A black shadow suddenly shot out from the other end of the space. Chapter 1456. That black shadow was like an extremely fine silk thread, and even those with excellent eyesight would find it difficult to detect its existence. However, that silk-like black shadow cut through space, bringing with it a subtle sound of breaking through the air that was directly buried by the raging black whirlwind and gray storm, and shot from the other end of the sky. That speed was abnormally fast. Even if it could not be compared to the godly speed that could even control time, it could still be said to be comparable to lightning speed. Coupled with the fact that the black shadow was difficult to catch, and did not carry any hostility, killing intent, or malice, even Noah only noticed its existence when the black shadow was only a few meters away from him. Of course, with Noah's ability, it was more than enough for him to react at such a distance. "Be careful." At that moment, Noah was slightly shocked, and he pulled Liliana into his arms, along with Yoli, who had just been protecting her, into his arms, and grabbed a girl's slender waist with one hand, and with the tip of his foot on the ground, he quickly retreated. However, the target of the black shadow was not Noah and his party at all. Under the astonished gaze of Noah, the black shadow, like a bird in a cage, rushed straight into the wave-like golden ripples that had just fluctuated. Yes. The opponent's target was not Noah and his party at all, but the treasure vault called the Gate of Babylon. No. That's not right either. To be more precise, it should be said that the opponent's target was an item in the gate of Babylon. Therefore, under Noah's astonished gaze, the silk-like black shadow rushed into the wave-like golden ripples, and immediately shot out from it. However, the black shadow that shot out from the gate of Babylon was no longer in the form of a silk thread, but in the form of a bead. And in the bead-like black shadow, there was a fist-sized, obsidian-like badge. It was the stone of Gorgon. The black shadow wrapped around the stone of Gorgon rose into the sky like a dark meteor, and disappeared into the clouds in an instant. Looking at this scene, Noah seemed to understand something, and he raised his head and looked at the clouds. The sudden phenomenon naturally attracted the attention of Erica and Hui Na, who were about to charge into the fray. The two girls, who were about to strike with all their might, stared blankly at the black shadow that rose into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. After they reacted, they quickly put down the weapons in their hands and cancelled the spells of the Golgotha's word and God's descent. The dark whirlwind and grey storm raging in the suburbs gradually dissipated. Erica and Hui Na both looked at Noah speechlessly, and they seemed to be caught off guard by this sudden change. As for Yoli and Liliana, they had no idea what was going on at all. They stayed in Noah's arms with a blank look on their faces, not reacting for a long time. Noah was the only one who was looking at the clouds in the sky. At this moment, the whole sky suddenly surged with darkness for no reason. It was the night. The bright sky in the daytime suddenly seemed to be accelerated by the flow of time, and was covered by the emerging darkness. In an instant, the bright day turned into a dark night. Soon after, a light and low, sacred and dark ballad resounded under the night sky. I sing the hymn of the Trinity Goddess, connecting the sky, earth, and darkness. For reincarnation and wisdom, I sing the song of the goddess that has been degraded. As a queen, I am regarded as a forbidden snake. For the queen's sigh, I sing the hymn of the goddess that has been broken in body and mind, humiliated by a noble father. For the humiliation of a loving mother, my name is Athena, the daughter of Zeus, the patron of Athens, an eternal virgin, the past. For the Mother Earth that gives birth to all, the past. For the Lord of the underworld who controls the darkness, the past. For the Queen of Wisdom who knows the scattered wisdom of the heavens, I swear, Athena is about to return to the original Athena. As the sacred and dark ballad resounded throughout the night, a radiant figure descended from the sky like a goddess. She slowly bloomed with brilliant white light in the night and slowly descended. Looking at the figure, Noah murmured as if he had expected it. So that's how it is, you've finally come to my side? Taking a closer look, it was a young girl about 17 or 18 years old. The young girl was wearing a Greek-style long white dress. Her entire body was emitting a brilliant white light, but the surrounding space was surging with waves of darkness. It was like a black fog that swept through the air, blowing her waist-length silver hair. She looked exceptionally beautiful. Her delicate face and beautiful appearance, even Alice, who was known as the most outstanding woman in Europe, could not beat her. Because, in mythology, this goddess was originally a virgin goddess famous for her beauty. The beautiful goddess floated under the night, looking down, but there was no one else in her eyes at all. Only Noah was looking at Noah. Looking at Noah standing on the ground, the beautiful goddess seemed to be looking at something special, like looking at a sweetheart, or simply looking at a fat prey, and she let out a charming laugh like a silver bell. I know, my fated one, you have a keen intuition and can find any enemy, but there is a limit to the distance. In order to retrieve that snake, I have been trying not to stimulate your senses, keeping a distance as far away as possible, and hiding my presence, secretly waiting for an opportunity. Now, I have finally waited for it. The god relic called Gorgon's stone had a deep connection with the goddess. No matter how far away, the goddess can clearly feel its location. Even if the stone of Gorgon is stored in another space, it will be the same. Although I don't know why, but in the past month, the snake aura that I placed on your body suddenly disappeared without a trace. But not long ago, the snake aura that I placed on your body reappeared. So, I came. It seems that even the goddess of snakes has no way to cross the world barrier and sense the existence of the stone of Gorgon that goes out of this world to another world. Then, after Noah returned to this world, the goddess who sensed the presence of the stone of Gorgon came directly. Moreover, she has been hiding in the dark, silently watching Noah. In order to wait for this moment. My fated enemy. The beautiful goddess floated high in the air, staring at Noah with burning emotions in her eyes. I have finally recovered the body of the Queen of the Trinity. It is time for you and me to fulfill our agreement and compete. The berserk curse power gushed out from the goddess' slender and beautiful body, spreading in all directions. Under the stimulation of the violent curse power, Yuri, who had spirit vision, spoke in a trembling voice. The disobedient Athena. With just this sentence, everyone present understood what kind of existence the goddess in front of them was. Especially Erica and Liliana, looking at the goddess who once appeared in front of them in the form of a young girl, and now had retrieved the snake part and turned into a young girl, they raised their swords and faced the sky. However, there was no one else in Athena's eyes at all. For the high and mighty goddess, mortals were not worth mentioning at all. Athena only had Noah in her eyes. Perhaps, with the relationship between Noah and Athena, even if there were other gods' layers nearby, Athena's first focus would be on Noah, right? The relationship between the two of them was bound together by this bond that was stronger than family, friends, and lovers even though they were clearly enemies. Here, Noah and Athena reunited. Chapter 1457. Under the dark night, the beautiful goddess stood in the air as if she was facing the wind. Her white and silver waist-length hair fluttered in the wind like the moonlight. The scene was exceptionally beautiful. Looking at Athena, who was floating in midair under the night sky, Noah didn't expect to reunite with her under such circumstances. After all, you are Athena. I thought you would definitely challenge me openly to take the power of the snake back from me. Noah looked straight at Athena. But, I didn't expect the result to be like this. If the situation allows, I wouldn't want to do this either. Athena seemed to agree with Noah's feelings and shook her head regretfully. If it's possible, I would also like to taste the fate between us bit by bit, and then slowly reap the results. But now, the situation doesn't allow me to continue like this. The situation doesn't allow? Noah was slightly taken aback and asked in confusion. What do you mean? Athena fell silent. After a while, she turned her head and looked into the distance as if she was looking at an existence that couldn't be captured by the naked eye. Ever since I sensed the aura of the snake and came to this land at the end of the east, I can often feel the restlessness in the air. That is a sign that this land is about to become chaotic. Athena was the goddess of wisdom and the goddess of war in charge of war. As the goddess of wisdom, Athena had the ability to predict the future and was wise enough to predict the future. And as the goddess of war, Athena could feel the arrival of war and disputes at any time. Now, the goddess who had recovered the identity of the ancient Trinity Queen of the divine realm asserted in an indiscernible but incomparably certain tone. The hero sleeping on this land is about to wake up and start the war against the demon king and the god slayer again. The part of me that is the goddess of wisdom told me so. Athena's words made Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Kira look at each other. Noah was silent for a while and sighed. As expected, you know that the last king is sleeping on this land. I am indeed aware of this matter. Athena retracted her gaze from afar and turned her attention back to Noah. So, I came to find you, and did not hesitate to use this method to take back the power of the snake that belonged to me, and fulfill the fate between us. Is that so? Noah shrugged. Although I can more or less guess why you suddenly became so anxious, let me ask you the reason and confirm a little. Since you've already guessed it, why are you still asking me when you already know the answer? How disrespectful to the goddess. If it was anyone else, I definitely wouldn't let them off so easily, but since it's you, I won't be angry, Athena replied while saying such ambiguous words with her beautiful face. This concubine has said before that as this concubine's fated enemy, this concubine will not let you die in the hands of that man. Letting you return to the earth is this concubine's responsibility. This sentence made Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Kira's hearts sink slightly. The meaning of Athena's words was quite obvious. This goddess of wisdom believed that once the last king was awakened, then Noah would definitely not be able to defeat him, and there was even a possibility of him surviving. Therefore, after sensing that the last king might be awakened at any time in the near future, Athena was anxious to take back the god relic of the Gorgon stone in such a sudden way, restore her identity as the Queen of the Trinity, retrieve the highest level of god power, and challenge Noah. Granting life and death is the responsibility of this concubine as the god of the underworld. Returning to the underworld that I am in charge of is equivalent to returning to the embrace of this concubine who is also the goddess of the earth who gives life. Athena looked like a girl who was expressing her love to her sweetheart, looking at Noah with burning eyes. So, Noah Dole, this concubine will take you into the underworld that I am in charge of, grant you death, and make you my property. Be prepared. As soon as she finished speaking, a surge of curse power gushed out from Athena's body. Although the power of the curse was not as strong as that of the great sage, heaven's equal, who was supported by the universe and the stars, it was strong enough to compete with the highest level gods like Welslana, Mercado, and Perseus, whom Noah had fought before. This was the true strength of Athena who had retrieved the power of the Trinity. Rumble. Under such circumstances, the ground where Noah and the rest were standing began to tremble slightly. Both Erica and Liliana reacted almost immediately. "O Leonheart King, show me the essence of the struggle now, my wings, become the steel of the phantom blade. Master Silver Craftsman, grant me power," the two knights chanted at the same time, holding the heart of the Lion King and Master Silver Craftsman in their hands. One of them stepped forward and stood in front of Noah. As if intending to protect Noah, he pointed the sword in his hand at Athena who was in midair. Seeing this, Huina finally reacted. Her usually innocent face more or less showed a trace of annoyance. As soon as they sensed the possibility of a battle, Erica and Liliana immediately went into battle mode, standing in front of Noah fearlessly to protect Noah. That was the action that the true followers of a king should take. After traveling together for nearly half a year, Erica and Liliana had developed the awareness to become Noah's sword and shield at any time to protect Noah. Compared to Erica and Liliana, Huina, who was confident that she would not lose to the two knights from the beginning, was quite weak in this aspect, which fully reflected the gap between them. This gap was undoubtedly equivalent to telling Huina who was the most suitable person to be Noah's follower. It was because of this that Huina, who was previously very confident that she could replace Erica and Liliana, was a little annoyed. Perhaps he had sensed Huina's annoyance. Noah's gaze did not move away from Athena, and he spoke softly to Huina without turning his head. "Huina, I'll leave Wanli Valley to you." "Yes, King." Huina's expression finally relaxed. She turned sideways and came in front of Yoli, holding her tachi, and also became alert. "Mr. Noah." Yoli poked his head out from behind Huina and spoke nervously. Then I, Wanli Valley, I'll leave the task of contacting Mr. Ganzue to you. Tell him the situation here and let him be prepared to deal with the aftermath." Noah did not hesitate to assign the task to Yoli. "Also, if you see anything with your spirit vision, remember to tell us." "Yes." Yoli showed a determined expression and took out his mobile phone. At this moment, the trembling of the ground suddenly stopped. This was because the ground in front of Noah and his group had unknowingly bulged in several places and gradually squirmed and distorted. The next moment, the squirming and distorted ground transformed into 3 giant snakes that were comparable in size to high-rise buildings. They hissed in the direction of Noah and his group. The air vibrated instantly. Looking at the 3 giant snakes, Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Huina's group of 4 girls all had solemn expressions. Divine beasts. There are 3, Athena, who had recovered her full strength, summoned 3 divine beasts in a short moment. If humans wanted to summon each divine beast, they would need to gather at least 30 magicians or conjurers of the highest level to hold a large-scale ceremony and spend a very long time to successfully summon them. However, Athena summoned 3 divine beasts with just a raise of her hand. This was the difference between the god of disobedience and ordinary humans. "Go, my followers." Athena, who was suspended in mid-air, ordered the 3-headed giant snake loudly. Devour all the followers of my old enemy. The three-headed giant snake's eyes suddenly revealed a fierce light. With a momentum that seemed to be able to shake the earth, it let out a long hiss and rushed out to attack Noah and his group. The battle was about to start. Chapter 1458. Rumble. Amidst the tremors of the earth, three huge snake monsters as tall as skyscrapers crushed the fragile ground. While plowing a trail on the ground, they charged in the direction of Noah's group. That scene was as if several tall mountains were closing in on them. The momentum was extremely terrifying. Looking at the three gigantic snakes charging toward them with great momentum, a cold glint flashed in Noah's eyes. Traces of cursed power surged from his body. But just as Noah was about to attack, Erica and Liliana stopped him at the same time. "Your Majesty, leave this to us for now," Liliana said in a stern voice. "Please save your strength to deal with Athena. It's just a divine beast. It's making a mountain out of a molehill to send a god-slaying demon king," Erica also said in a gorgeous and relaxed tone. "Right now, it's probably just Athena's probing. Or maybe Athena is trying to adapt to her newly recovered strength and is testing her skills. So, as our trump card, you can't expose yourself so easily." After saying that, Erica and Liliana looked at each other and nodded. Erica raised the Lion King's heart in her hand and chanted Calvary's words again. "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani." "Lord, why have you forsaken me?" The despairing words reverberated in the air once again, causing the surrounding temperature to drop instantly. When Erica used Calvary again, Liliana also raised the Silver Grandmaster in her hand and made a declaration. "People, listen to David's lament. Why do heroes fall? Why do war machines vanish?" The words that were completely different from Erica's echoed, causing the surrounding air to slowly turn cold. This cold feeling was very similar to the Golgotha's word that Erica used. But the power contained in the two words was completely different. Erica's words contained the despair and hatred of someone who had been driven to a dead end. Liliana's words, on the other hand, were filled with sorrow that seeped into one's heart. It was as if the people of the world were lamenting and crying for a great figure who had passed away. It was very heart-wrenching. "Mountains of Gilboa, I pray that sweet dew rain will descend upon you. Offer the sacrifices that thirsty beasts yearn for. Abandon yourself and become the shield of the brave warriors of the other side, the shield of Saul. Inject fat into you and dedicate yourself to this place." Under the sorrowful spirit of words, a blue radiance flickered on Liliana's Silver Grandmaster. At this moment, the magic that Liliana used was the same as Electra's Calvary spirit. It was the highest level combat magic that could be learned under the rank of Holy Knight, the Song of Bow. If Erica's Calvary was to express the despair of a dying saint, then Liliana's Bow Song was to express the lament of a great hero who had passed away. Regardless of which side it was a combat magic spell that could bring a certain degree of damage to the divine capital and make the gods feel pain. Of course, although combat magic spells of this level could bring harm to the gods, the damage was very limited. Moreover, if it couldn't hit the target, it would be meaningless. For the gods, this kind of magic spell was only slightly pleasing to the eye. It could break through the curse resistance of the god slayers and the god of disobedience and thus take effect, but it didn't mean that it could bring about a threat. However, it was nothing to the god slayers and the god of disobedience, but it was a threat to the divine beasts to a certain extent. Therefore, Erica gathered the power of the Lion King's heart that carried despair and stabbed it out at the speed of lightning, slashing through one of the giant snakes. Slash! With a tearing sound, the giant snake's scales and skin were cut open, and a large amount of blood sputtered out. The giant snake let out a loud hiss, and the murderous glint in its eyes intensified. It turned its head and charged in Erica's direction. At this time, Liliana suddenly jumped up like a swallow and cut through the sky. She waved the Silver Grandmaster Craftsman in her hand that contained the power of grief. Like an arrow, she flew past quickly. Slash! With another tearing sound, the other giant snake's eyeball was pierced through, and it let out a loud scream that shook the air. The second giant snake also turned its body and chased after Liliana, who was leaping back and forth in the air like a bird. Only the last giant snake was left, and it still charged in Noah's direction without hesitation. However, at this moment, a light voice sounded behind Noah. In the morning fog of the grassy plains, the bottom of the footbag gradually became wet. After a long journey through the Su Changshao plains, and then crossing the White River Pass, although it was only a small portion, the unique aura of a god rose from Noah's back. Under the heavens, Ji Ci, the food of the country, Ding Ci, etc. My wife is the ruler of the country, commanding the soldiers, calling for Ji Ci to come down, breaking thousands of plates. People will be in harmony, not serving as officials, the country will be in harmony with Ji Ci. The ethereal word spirit rippled in the dark night, causing a violent gust of wind to rise from the battlefield. It turned into countless sharp, invisible blades that rushed into the sky before descending, slamming heavily into the remaining giant snake. This time, a series of tearing sounds rang out one after another. The giant snake let out a painful hiss as its body was continuously sliced by the invisible wind blades. In an instant, its flesh was lacerated and blood flowed out. Then, Hui Na, with her katana in hand, leaped forward and came in front of Noah. With her back to Noah, she shouted loudly, "Don't forget about me." After saying that, Hui Na rushed out with a whirlwind all over her body. Susanu was the storm god. After borrowing the power of the storm god, Hui Na could also use a small portion of the storm god's authority to manipulate the wind. Its power was even stronger than that of the spirit of speech and the song of Bao. Just now, if Erica and Hui Na continued to fight, the final winner would definitely be Hui Na. Hence, while Erica and Liliana were struggling to deal with one of the divine beasts, Hui Na was already entangled with the remaining giant snakes. For a while, the three girls were evenly matched with the three divine beasts. However, Noah knew that the girls were in a bad situation. For example, Erica and Liliana's Calvary's Word and Song of the Bow were gradually declining in power. After all, although the two combat magic skills were exquisite and could even break through the curse resistance of the God Slayer and the God of Disobedience, that was only the effect, not the power. As the highest level of combat magic under the rank of Paladin, although it could threaten the divine beasts, it was not enough to annihilate them. If they wanted to annihilate the divine beasts, Erica and Liliana were not strong enough. Unless the two of them could reach the rank of Paladin and learn the highest level of combat magic that only the highest rank of Paladin could learn. Otherwise, only by joining forces could they have a way to deal with a divine beast. In a one-on-one fight, Erica and Liliana's power was still a distance away from that of the divine beasts. Although Hui Na was evenly matched with the divine beasts by relying on the god's descent, she gradually lost her strength and began to slow down. Using the god's descent would put a burden on the body. If Hui Na couldn't deal with the divine beasts before her body couldn't move, she would definitely lose. Therefore, the situation was quite critical for the girls. This made Athena, who was floating in the air, let out a charming laugh. "This concubine's fated enemy. It seems that your maidservants are no match for this concubine's family. In the competition between my subordinates, the one who wins will be this concubine." Hearing this, Noah did not have the time to speak when a dim light flashed in the eyes of Yuli by the side. This caused her face to be filled with joy as she cried out, "Everyone! Please attack the tail of the snake. That is the connection between the divine beast of the snake and the earth. The place where it obtains essence and life." Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na's eyes lit up. Chapter 1459. Bam! Accompanied by a loud explosion, the ground suddenly burst open, raising a thick cloud of dust and gravel. Amidst a series of loud noises, it smashed into the ground. It was the damage caused by the three giant snakes crashing into the ground with their huge bodies. With the three giant snakes as the center, the powerful shockwaves spread in all directions. In the shockwaves, Erica, Liliana, and Hui-Na retreated in 3 different directions from the thick sand and strong shock waves, and the cursed power in their bodies surged to the peak. The first person to move was still Erica. Steel Lion, I entrust you with the spirit of the words of Sai and Fury. Bathe in the holy blood of the last phase and manifest holy spear Longinus. While retreating, Erica raised the Lion King's heart in her hand and poured all the cursed power in her body into it. Suddenly, the Lion King's heart that had Golgotha's spirit emitted a dazzling red light. It continuously changed shape within the red light, and finally, it turned into an extremely luxurious-looking spear. Hiya! Erica yelled. She gripped the spear tightly, pulled it over her shoulder, and threw it out with all her might. The glowing red spear immediately turned into a flash of light. Like a red meteor, it cut through the space and directly shot in the direction of the giant snake. At the same time, Liliana raised the Grandmaster's silver sword in her hand in midair. Jonathan's bow, the hero's weapon that is as fast as a vulture and as strong as a lion. Run and destroy your enemy. The magic sword named Silver Grandmaster Craftsman blossomed with a blue light, and in the end, it transformed into a longbow that flickered with blue light. Wielding her longbow, Liliana pulled the bowstring in the direction of the giant serpent. An arrow flashing with blue light appeared on the longbow. The tip of the arrow was aimed at the giant serpent that was charging towards the ground. Shoot through. In the next moment, Liliana loosened her grip on the bowstring. As a result, the arrow that was flashing with blue light shot out and turned into another blue meteor. It also cut through the space and shot towards the direction of the giant snake with a sharp piercing sound. Although Hui-Na was 1 step slower than the knights who had a tacit understanding, she didn't want to be outdone. She raised the Susanu's godly power in her body to the peak, causing a storm to surge out from her body like a tornado and cover her whole body. My back to you is the king of the country, true wood stands, unbreakable mountain oversteps, by and shoot to see my Harano, imperial residence, and Museet, in the words that sounded like a ballad. The storm that covered Hui-Na's entire body surged towards the tachi in his hand, spinning wildly on the blade of the tachi. Take this. Immediately, Hui-Na held the tachi that carried a raging storm. Her entire body suddenly swept out, turning into the 3rd meteor, rushing in the direction of the giant snake. Whoosh! Amidst the almost identical sounds of breaking through the air, 3 meteors streaked across the sky, drawing a nearly perfect arc in space. They flickered with brilliant light and landed with extreme precision on the tails of the 3 giant snakes. Poochie! In the tearing sound, the spear flashing with red light, the arrow blooming with blue light, and the tachi that carried the storm pierced through the tails of the 3 giant snakes and even directly came out of their bodies. At this moment, the 3 giant snakes stopped abruptly. The red light in their eyes dimmed little by little. Even their bodies began to petrify and turned into snake-shaped statues. Bang! In the explosion, the 3 petrified giant snakes exploded and turned into gravel all over the sky. They scattered on the ground and disappeared without a trace. In the storm, Erica, Liliana, and Hui-Na retreated as if riding the wind and waves. After a while, they landed on the ground. The whole place suddenly became quiet. Seeing that Erica, Liliana, and Hui-Na had all defeated their divine beast-level opponents safely, Yuli breathed a sigh of relief. Although Yuli didn't directly participate in the battle, he had made a great contribution. Just now, if Yuli hadn't successfully triggered spirit vision and seen the weaknesses of the 3 divine beasts, it would have been absolutely impossible for Erica, Liliana, and Hui-Na to defeat the 3 divine beasts unscathed. Knowing this, even Athena couldn't help but cast her eyes in Yuli's direction. She glanced at Erica, Liliana, and Hui-Na, and finally fixed her eyes on Noah. You seem to have a group of capable warriors and witches under your command. Really? Noah smiled. It's really an honor to be praised by Athena, who has trained many excellent warriors. Athena was known for her wisdom and beauty, but when it came to training warriors, she had great authority. In Greek mythology, there were legends that Athena had trained many famous warriors. Among them, even the hero Perseus, who killed the snake-haired demoness Medusa, was ordered by Athena to go to the island of the snake demons to slay dragons and snakes. Therefore, Athena's words were undoubtedly more convincing than anyone else's. Just like a certain anime that had been popular for a long time, didn't it also mention a group of fighters who were constantly fighting under Athena's command like unkillable cockroaches? There was no way to use the same move twice against them, and there was still a certain power called the little universe that burst out from them. That was enough to prove how strong Athena's divinity as the god of war was. But it was also because of this that the performance of the group of girls was just barely acceptable to Athena. It's a great achievement for humans to challenge the followers of the gods as mortals and win, Athena said to Noah with a relaxed smile. It's just that those girls have reached their limits, right? Upon hearing that, Noah couldn't help but turn his gaze in the direction of Erica, Liliana, and Hui-Na. He saw that Erica, Liliana, and Hui-Na were panting heavily, their slender shoulders heaving up and down. In order to deal with the divine beast-level opponents, Erica and Liliana's spell power was almost exhausted. They couldn't even maintain the combat magic of the Golgotha's spirit and Song of the Bow, causing the red and blue lights flickering on the Lion King's heart and Silver Master Craftsman to gradually disappear. Hui-Na, who had used God's Descent, was a little unsteady. She stood with difficulty and was in a rather bad state. In fact, Noah had already foreseen this outcome. Therefore, Noah didn't show any troubled expression. He raised his head, looked at the high and mighty Athena, and spoke indifferently. Even so, I'm still the winner of this competition between my subordinates. Upon hearing Noah's words, Athena's eyes flickered, and the smile on her beautiful and charming face became a little cold. It's just a playful competition. You're my fated enemy. Don't tell me you think you can win against Athena, who is in charge of war. No matter how small the war is victory, and defeat is defeat, Noah said with a half-smile. Or could it be that the famous Athena is not even willing to accept this level of victory? The smile on Athena's face slowly disappeared, and she stared at Noah speechlessly. Noah didn't evade and looked straight back. The expression in his deep, dark eyes remained unchanged. Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Hui-Na held their breaths. An oppressive atmosphere began to spread in the air. After a long time, Athena suddenly sighed and smiled sweetly. It's also my mistake to reveal the competition between my subordinates without any consideration. All right, I'll let you win this time. But you have to remember, you're my fated enemy. The victory between you and me has only just begun. Athena's voice slowly sounded. I'll prepare a suitable battlefield to fight you. When the time comes, it will be a head-on battle between you and me. After saying that, a gust of darkness emerged around Athena, and she disappeared in an instant. Noah looked in the direction where Athena disappeared and didn't speak for a long time. Chapter 1460. Come on, drink this. In the hotel of the Western Heaven Palace, Noah brought a bottle of red potion to Hui-Na's mouth. Hui-Na obediently drank the potion that was delivered to her mouth little by little. Looking at Hui-Na, who was lying in her arms with a tired face, Yoli couldn't wait to ask Noah. Hui-Na should be okay, right? It's okay, Noah responded casually as he fed the potion to Hui-Na. Just like before, it's just a burden on the body caused by using invite God to descend. It's not a big deal. Drink this potion, and it won't take long for you to recover. Yoli's pretty face, which had been tense all the time, gradually relaxed. Beside her, Erica and Liliana, who were sitting and resting, were not injured, but they had consumed too much of their spell power. They explained the situation to Alice, who had been staying in the hotel. Even Athena has appeared? Alice sighed. Now, more and more god-slayers and disobedient gods have gathered. For the people of this country, this should be an unprecedented disaster, right? Liliana said with a sad face. I guess the force called the History Compilation Committee should be having a headache now, right? Perhaps, as Athena said, an unprecedented upheaval is about to happen in this country, Erica said calmly. Multiple god-slayers and disobedient gods have appeared in this country, and there are also unknown heroes sleeping in a corner of this island. Coupled with the god ancestor who has been eyeing this country covetously, the turmoil is inevitable. Upon hearing Erica's words, a sorrowful expression appeared on Yuli's face. Even the exhausted Hui Na let out a bitter laugh. She clearly felt that the future was going to be tough. Noah curled his lips and said so. Since the last king is sleeping in this island, then this turmoil will come sooner or later. Since it will come sooner or later, then it is already destined to be unavoidable. Why should we feel a headache now? Even Alice, Erica, and Liliana couldn't help but laugh bitterly when they heard this. However, Noah was right. Since the last king was sleeping in this island, it was only a matter of time before chaos broke out. Now, it was just a moment. What I am more concerned about now is the movements of the other godslayers. Noah turned his gaze to Alice. The chaos here should have spread throughout the entire magic world. The rest of the deicide should know about what happened here. Although I don't know if they already know about the existence and whereabouts of the last king, they shouldn't do anything unusual, right? For the demon kings who were born to be the source of chaos and the center of conflict, perhaps there was nothing more attractive to them than a hero who specialized in annihilating the demon kings. If the rest of the godslayers knew about the existence and whereabouts of the last king, it would not be strange for them to all gather in this island country. When that time came, it would truly be the end of the world. All 7 of the god slayers were gathered in one place. That was a terrifying result that no one wanted to imagine. After all, no one would put 7 nuclear bombs that could explode at any time together, right? Who knew if one of them would suddenly go crazy and explode, igniting all the other nuclear bombs and causing a big explosion together? That scene could only be said to be too beautiful and no one dared to look at it. In this regard, Alice seemed to have a deep understanding of this and smiled elegantly. I have already contacted the Sage Parliament and asked them to report to me the current movements of the god slayers all over the world. According to the report from the Sage Parliament, at present, the movements of the 7 god slayers in the world were as follows. Marquis Warban was staying in his villa in Austria and did not do anything unusual. Bishop Luo Hao was discovered this morning to have returned to Mount Lu in China and did not come out. Madame Aisha's current whereabouts were unknown and there was no news at all. However, this situation had been maintained for many years, so there should be no abnormalities. John Plato Smith was still in Los Angeles, North America. He was leading the good faction's magicians to deal with the evil faction's magicians. If there were no accidents, he would not have the time to wander around other countries. The idiot Tony was taking Andre to East Asia. There seemed to be signs of the god of disobedience there, which made Tony very interested. So far, there were no signs of changes in the itinerary. As for Alexander, just as you think, that guy is currently hiding in this country. Alice reported the current movements of the god slayers to Noah one by one. Then, the rest is you. That should go without saying, right? As she said this, Alice looked at Noah with a somewhat strange expression. Even her pretty face was a little flushed. Seeing Alice in such a state, Liliana asked curiously. Princess, what's wrong? No, it's nothing. Alice coughed deliberately and glanced at Noah. I think it's better for you to not know for the time being, although you will find out sooner or later. While this sentence made Liliana puzzled, it also made Erica raise her eyebrows and cast an inquisitive look at Noah. Obviously, even though she didn't know what had happened, Erica still guessed that Noah must have done something. In this regard, Noah just glanced at Alice a little unnaturally. As a result, Alice's pretty face became even redder. The way she looked at Noah was as if she was looking at a wolf in sheep's clothing. It was very strange. Seeing Alice's reaction, and thinking that she now knew the movements of the various god slayers, Noah knew what was going on. Alice must have already heard the rumor that Noah had taken Luo Hao as his concubine. After all, His Excellency had already said that he would announce this matter to the world. If Alice was investigating the movements of the god slayers, it was only a matter of course to know this news. This made Noah look away from Alice's strange and curious gaze with some resentment. He also deliberately coughed and turned to look at Yoli. Then, what did the History Compilation Committee say? Hearing Noah's words, Yoli was a little worried. Actually, the committee has brought some bad news. Including Noah, the attention of everyone present suddenly focused on Yoli. Isn't it good news? Noah spread his hands. Athena has already said that the last king is on the verge of recovery. There is no news worse than that. Wanraku, just say it directly. I understand. Yoli took a deep breath and became serious. According to the report of the committee, not long ago, a huge amount of cursed power gathered on the beach near Tokyo, accompanied by the natural phenomenon of lightning and thunder. Not long after that, a huge amount of cursed power also gathered on the beach not far from here, but it was accompanied by the sudden darkening of the sky. Lightning and night? Erica murmured. That's a phenomenon that can't be any more obvious. Athena should be on the other side of the night, right? Liliana said directly. That goddess is probably preparing for the battle with the king, just like when she made the declaration. Lancelot should be on the other side of the lightning. Alice nodded. As the war god of steel, Lancelot's characteristics are the power to control lightning and the ability to turn his body into mist to achieve immortality. Now, the signs of lightning have appeared, which should be Lancelot's appearance. In other words, the war god is no longer the shadow of God, but has appeared as the god of disobedience? Huina asked in surprise. Why did he suddenly appear? I'm afraid that the god has already noticed that the last king is on this island and is ready to go all out. Noah frowned. However, Athena and Lancelot appearing at the same time is a little troublesome. Now, it's up to you. Erica looked at Noah. Which side do you want to go to? Noah was silent. This was truly a difficult choice to make. Chapter 1461. Crash. The sound of the waves reverberated in the silent night, filling the air with a tranquil atmosphere, calming the hearts of the people. The goddess, who was famous for her beauty, was currently standing on the beach where waves were constantly crashing. She was looking at the endless ocean, her robes fluttering in the wind, adding a sense of beauty to the tranquil atmosphere. If this was just an ordinary night, such a scene would definitely make anyone who saw it fall into a trance. Unfortunately, this was not an ordinary night. If someone was here, they would definitely notice it. Now, it was not even noon yet, let alone night. However, even though it was not even noon yet, the sky here was as dark as night. There was not even a full moon or stars. All the light had disappeared without a trace in this area, leaving not a single trace. It was not an exaggeration to say that this was an environment where one could not even see one's fingers. Anyone who could move normally in such an environment would definitely not be an ordinary person. Under such circumstances, the goddess named Athena looked at the scenery of the ocean and murmured. Sure enough, the battlefield should be on the sea. In fact, the sea god Poseidon was Athena's archenemy. At least, in Greek legends, the relationship between Athena and Poseidon could only be described as enemies. In Greek mythology, Poseidon, the sea god who ruled the sea, was quite aggressive and ambitious. He always wanted to seize the throne of Zeus, the king of the gods. However, he was discovered by Zeus and was banished to the ground. However, Poseidon's divinity had an aggressive side, which made him unable to rest in peace and often fought with the gods. For this reason, Athena and Poseidon also fought in the myths and formed a grudge. However, Athena, who regarded Poseidon as an enemy, did not hate the sea ruled by the sea god because of this. This was because the sea and the earth were the source of life. As the goddess of life and death, Athena could not hate the sea. What Athena really hated was the sun. The sun could illuminate the sky that was controlled by Zeus, who had always been bullying Métis, who was equivalent to Athena's avatar. Zeus had also reduced Athena to his own daughter and expelled the darkness, driving out the night of Athena, the goddess of darkness, causing the sky to fall into the hands of Zeus. If there was no sun, the sky would be Athena's domain. Athena's darkness would occupy the entire sky, and every corner of the sky would be under her control. However, it was because of the sun that Athena's darkness was unable to take over the sky, preventing the night from descending. As a result, the sky had always been Zeus' domain. That was why the queen of the night, Athena, was truly unhappy with the existence of the sun that could expel the darkness. Of course, Athena's pride would not allow her to admit that the reason why the goddess hated the sun was because the sun was the nemesis of the goddess of earth. As the god of death who controls hell, as the goddess of darkness who brings the night, as well as the goddess of earth who is the source of life, no matter which attribute it is, the sun firmly restrains Athena. After all, since ancient times, not only was light able to expel darkness, but it was also believed to be able to expel ghosts and undead, preventing contact with hell. On the other hand, the earth could only thrive and obtain life under the sun's illumination. As the queen of hell, darkness, and earth, Athena's attributes were completely restrained by the sun. This was also one of the reasons why Athena hated the sun. Every time Athena appeared, it would be accompanied by the arrival of night. This was an important reason. Even if Athena regained her identity as the queen of the Trinity, she would not want to move around under the sun, so, I have to choose the sea. With this thought in mind, Athena's eyes that gazed at the sea emitted an evil glint. Her eyes were like an owl's, but also like a snake's. The common point was that they were extremely cold. Being stared at by these eyes would definitely bring death to humans in an instant. Under the gaze of such a pair of sinister eyes, the surging waves in front of Athena came to a halt as though time had come to a halt. Rumble, the sea suddenly trembled for no reason, and as if there was a volcanic eruption at the bottom of the sea, it suddenly surged violently. Crash. Accompanied by a loud sound of water, an island separated from the surface of the water and slowly rose up. It was a stone island. Whether it was the ground, the trees, or the grass, they were all made of stone. Such a stone island separated from the surface of the water and rose from the bottom of the sea. Not long after, it floated above the surface of the sea and stopped trembling as if it had been there from the beginning. When the stone island completely floated above the surface of the water, Athena's evil eyes dimmed little by little, but an extremely beautiful smile appeared on her face. Yes, this is it. Only this is suitable to be the battlefield of the goddess of earth. Although Athena's attributes were more complicated in mythology, after regaining her identity as the queen of the Trinity, Athena's essence was only left with one. Snake. The snake goddess who had been banished by the heroes of the Steel Empire and attacked by them. Since this is the battlefield of fate, only this can best represent Athena's snake. Looking at the stone island that she created with her authority and divine power, Athena let out an innocent and joyful laugh like an ordinary girl. Upon closer inspection, one could see that there were many statues on the stone island. Each of them was made of stone, and their faces were filled with panic, despair, wailing, and fear. They were lifelike human statues that made people feel a chill in their hearts. Gazing at these creepy statues, the smile on Athena's beautiful face became wider and wider. Although this is just a scene created by my authority, and not those stupid warriors that once challenged my clone, it is enough to serve as a foil. Yes. Whether it was the island that originally only existed in mythology, or the statues that once challenged the Medusa, but were turned into stone, they were just foils. Athena only cared about the man that had a deep relationship with her. It was precisely because of this that Athena enjoyed all of this from the bottom of her heart. She enjoyed the whole process of preparing to meet that man again and determine the winner on the battlefield. For Athena, this was something to be intoxicated with. My fated enemy, hurry up and come to me, Athena murmured expectantly. I can't wait any longer. While murmuring the words of a young girl who missed her sweetheart, the smile on Athena's face suddenly disappeared without any reason. Soon after, Athena suddenly opened her mouth in anger. Leave here, maid, this is a place that I prepared for that person, it is not a place that you can set foot in. Along with Athena's angry shout, the sand on the beach suddenly rolled up and turned into a giant snake. It opened its bloody mouth and pounced towards the grass in the distance. Bang! In the midst of the explosion, the giant snake that used its huge head to hit the ground shook the violent impact and dust, causing the ground to tremble and crack. Then, in the impact and dust, a figure of light rushed out and burst into the distance, disappearing without a trace in an instant. Seeing this, Athena snorted, turned her head, and continued to look at the creepy rocky island. As if thinking of that man again, she revealed a charming smile. At the same time, the figure of light that escaped from Athena's attack swept into the distant horizon. After a long time, it stopped and revealed its full appearance. Impressively, it was Guinevere. Guinevere's face was a little pale, cold sweat dripping down, and he muttered to himself with some lingering fear. I didn't expect Athena to be so obsessed with the relationship with that king. She didn't even give me a chance to speak before attacking. Originally, Guinevere wanted to try to cooperate with Athena to deal with Noah. But now it seemed that Athena would not agree to let anyone interfere with her relationship with Noah. There's no other way, I can only give up on Athena's side. Guinevere was extremely unwilling to turn into a stream of light and rushed in another direction. Chapter 1462. An island has appeared by the sea. In the hotel, Noah, who was still worrying about where to go, immediately received the shocking news. An island? Hui Na asked curiously. Why would an island suddenly appear? I don't know. Mr. Gansu just called and told me about it. He asked me to report it to the king. Yoli shook his head. If we can get closer, we might be able to get more information. But Athena seems to be there, and the people of the History Compilation Committee don't dare to get too close. In other words, it should be Athena's doing, right? Liliana said with a stern expression. To be able to create an island out of thin air, no other power in the world can do such a miracle except for the power of the god of disobedience and the god of deicide. But why would Athena create an island? Hui Na didn't understand. What's the point of doing that? I'm afraid that's the battlefield that Athena mentioned, right? Erica said. In order to face the opponent that she acknowledged, in order to fight against the man of her destiny, Athena prepared the stage. It was a battlefield that she created with the consciousness to perform the final glory of her life, whether it was for the king or for Athena. But since Athena didn't hesitate to create an island, it shouldn't be an ordinary island, right? Alice pondered for a moment and asked Noah tentatively. Do you need me to use my spirit body avatar to take a look? No, it's better not to do that. Noah rejected Alice's proposal. To Athena, humans are like weeds. They are of no importance. If you barge into Athena's territory, you might be attacked. She is the god of the underworld who controls death. Even if you use your spirit body avatar, she might have a way to hurt you. That would be too dangerous, Yoli hurriedly advised. Miss Alice, it's better not to do that. You're right, Alice said helplessly. Although I'm a little curious and concerned about the island, it's better not to approach it casually since it's dangerous. At least, it's best not to approach it without the company of a god slayer who can fight the goddess. But at least we understand one thing, Erica declared. That is, Athena is indeed very interested in having a showdown with our king. Everyone nodded in agreement. The gods of disobedience were originally a group of transcendental existences that had been devoured by madness. They were only normal when they were in the realm of the undead, which was the world of myths and legends. If they appeared on the ground, they would immediately fall into a certain obsession, and for that, they would not hesitate to disturb the world and slaughter living beings. For Athena, Noah was her obsession to appear in the world. If she didn't end things with Noah, the goddess would probably chase after Noah until the end of the world, even if the world fell apart and the universe was destroyed. In fact, at the end of the day, Noah and Athena didn't have much contact with each other. It was only because of a chance encounter that they became friends. If Noah hadn't met Athena, he wouldn't have found the Stone of Gorgon by tracking Athena's whereabouts. If Noah hadn't found the Stone of Gorgon, he wouldn't have been targeted by Athena. If Noah hadn't been targeted by Athena back then, she wouldn't have schemed to lure Warban, Luohao, and Tony to him. If Noah hadn't defeated the three god slayers because Warban, Luohao, and Tony were lured by Athena, Athena wouldn't have looked at Noah in a new light and started to pay attention to Noah. After that, Noah and Athena formed an alliance together in Naples to fight Perseus. After a series of disputes, they formed a deeper relationship and made an agreement. Thinking of this, Noah couldn't help but think of the agreement he made with Athena in Naples. At that time, Noah and Athena made an agreement that there would be a real winner one day. At that time, if Noah won, then Athena would be able to stay by Noah's side forever as a guardian and fight with Noah. And if Noah lost, then Noah would be at Athena's disposal. In fact, the reason why he made such an agreement was entirely because of a whim. As for Athena, Noah felt that it was inconceivable. Noah had always been the kind of person who would be good to others if others were good to him. If others were to find fault with him, then he would return the favor tenfold or even 100-fold. Undoubtedly, the goddess had caused a lot of trouble for Noah in order to retrieve the stone of Gorgon, but Noah didn't dislike Athena at all. Instead, as he got along with Athena, he was gradually attracted by the goddess' pride and charm. That feeling was not love, but it was a kind of specious thing. Presumably, Athena must have felt the same way, which was why she was so obsessed with Noah. If this kind of feeling had to be described with something, then it could only be described by Athena. Fate. This was the fate between Noah and Athena. To put it bluntly, it was just a kind of ill-fated relationship. However, whether it was Noah or Athena, because of this ill-fated relationship, they began to pursue each other. Athena said. No matter what, she was the only one who could bring death to Noah. Noah had said the same thing. In any case, the person who could defeat Athena must be him. From then on, the fate between Noah and Athena had reached a deep-rooted state and could not be forcibly broken. Therefore, when she sensed that the last king was likely to wake up at any time to conquer the demon king and the god slayer, Athena was eager to recapture the stone of Gorgon, restore the power of the Trinity, and end things with Noah. However, when he saw Athena again, Noah was not as eager to fight as Athena. Otherwise, Noah wouldn't have chosen to watch from the sidelines during the confrontation with Athena and sent Erica and the other girls to accept Athena's challenge. Then, he used the victory of a subordinate's competition as an excuse to make the prideful Athena leave as a loser. Because, Noah believed that if she lost a duel, with Athena's self-esteem, she would never be like a stray dog, unwilling to accept defeat and continue to challenge. The reason why he did this was because Noah subconsciously did not want to fight to the death with Athena. That was the reason. And it turned out that Noah's idea was correct. Athena did not continue to fight on the spot, but chose to retreat. However, Athena immediately began to prepare for the battlefield again, and even summoned an entire island. One could imagine how much Athena looked forward to the battle with Noah. Under such circumstances, could Noah still avoid the battle? If he avoided the battle, how disappointed would the goddess, who was known for her beauty, be? At that moment, Noah closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Hui Na, as well as Alice, all the girls present cast their eyes on Noah, waiting for Noah's decision. In the end, would Noah choose to fight Athena? Or fight Lancelot? The decision was made at this moment. After a while, Noah suddenly opened his eyes and made such a declaration. After sunset, we will fight Athena. Hearing this, Erica and Liliana smiled at the same time, knelt on one knee, and performed the most solemn knight salute. Yes, sir. Yoli and Hui Na looked at each other, nodded, and turned to Noah. King. Please let us join the battle. Noah nodded, then turned to Alice. Meeting Noah's gaze, Alice opened her mouth, and just as she was about to say something, the phone in her arms rang. Alice was slightly taken aback. She smiled apologetically at Noah, picked up the phone, and looked at the screen. At the next moment, Alice's eyes widened, and she exclaimed in shock. Alexander was severely injured by Lancelot and escaped. This sentence made Noah's eyes flicker. Chapter 1463. Above the boundless sky, a bolt of lightning abruptly flew across the clear sky. It cut through the air and cut open the atmosphere. With a sharp sound, it rushed forward. With a speed comparable to that of lightning, Enrich used the authority of lightning spark to enter the world of seraphic speed. His body had also turned into lightning. He desperately whipped his body, squeezing out the remaining curse power and physical strength in his body. He gritted his teeth and didn't waste a single second of time flying. For the current Enrich, time was definitely the most precious thing. Because with Enrich's speed, he only needed a short second to cross a city and reach the other side of the sky. In other words, time meant distance. With just one more second, Enrich could increase the distance and avoid being chased by the enemy. Although Enrich had used the authority of seraphic speed, and it was reasonable to say that there were no more than 3 people in this world who could catch up to him. However, the enemy didn't belong to this category. He was an incarnation of the realm of the gods and couldn't be judged by common sense. Therefore, Enrich could only whip his body desperately to escape. He didn't know how long this situation lasted. Enrich only knew that when the curse power in his body that was thousands of times more powerful than the average magician's was finally exhausted, he finally couldn't hold on any longer. The speed of the lightning that was flashing in the sky slowed down bit by bit. Like a kite with a broken string, it fell down to the ground. Finally, as if a bolt of lightning had fallen from the sky, the lightning suddenly landed on the bank of a river. Bang! The lightning from the sky exploded the ground, causing bricks and gravel to fly up and sand to fill the air. After the sand and dust dissipated, Enrich was lying in the hole that had been blown up by the lightning, gasping for breath. Cough! With a cough, Enrich spat out a mouthful of blood. Not only that, but blood continuously flowed out from Enrich's abdomen and instantly dyed the ground red. Taking a closer look, there was a bloody hole in Enrich's abdomen. It even broke open Enrich's back. In other words, there was a hole in Enrich's abdomen that allowed one to see the scene behind him. The sharp pain seemed to come from his bone marrow, tormenting Enrich's remaining consciousness. The damage to his body was very serious. The pain in his abdomen was very intense. His heart was beating like a drum. It felt like every corner of his body was breaking apart. It was unbearable. There was no doubt that Enrich had received a fatal injury that could take his life in an instant. An ordinary person, even a magician with high attainments in magic, would most likely die from such a serious injury. To be able to survive such a severe injury, it was definitely not a human. Only a godly ancestor like Guinevere and the princess could survive such a serious injury. Only a godly ancestor like Guinevere and the princess could survive such a serious injury. However, Enrich was a demon king that surpassed even the aforementioned existences. Although his body was that of a human, his vitality could be considered monstrous. That was what a true god slayer was. This was also the reason why Noah, who had a large chunk of his abdomen dug out by the 3-headed dragon, was able to continue living like that. The so-called god slayers were such a group of unnatural existences. That was why they could even kill gods. That was why they were feared by humans. Perhaps, only the legendary hero who specialized in annihilating the demon kings, the last king, would be able to deal with these foul existences. However, if this continues, no matter how tenacious my vitality is, I will still die from excessive blood loss. Now, Enrich was facing such a situation. Naturally, he himself understood this the best. If he had the power of resurrection like Noah and Warban, Enrich might still be able to survive. If he had the power of immortality like Tony, who could enter a state of suspended animation, Enrich would be able to survive until someone came to his rescue. Unfortunately, Enrich did not have that kind of power. If there was still curse power in his body, he could still use the power of lightning spark to turn into lightning and abandon his human body to avoid death from excessive blood loss. This was one of the reasons why Enrich was able to survive until now. However, now, the curse power in Enrich's body had been completely exhausted from the previous battle and escape. In short, Enrich could only resign himself to fate. Although he said that, Yerek endured the severe pain in his body and laughed self-deprecatingly. Although it's up to fate, in the end, I will still be saved, right? After all, Yerek was very clear. The woman who had always been against him would definitely have placed some spies around him. Therefore, that woman would definitely be the first to know about his condition and rush over. At that time, Yerek would naturally be saved. Although, if that woman saved me, I would rather die. As soon as he said this, an elegant and light voice sounded in front of Yerek. That's great, Alexander. You've finally understood how I felt in the past. Hearing this voice, Yerek breathed a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he clicked his tongue in his heart and raised his head with difficulty to look forward. In front of Yerek, the space suddenly trembled. A gush of darkness surged out of nowhere and condensed into the shape of a door. Then, from the door that seemed to be formed by a pitch-black swamp, two figures slowly walked out and came to Yerek, who was lying in a pool of blood. Hello, Alexander. Alice seemed to be friendly as she greeted him. I didn't expect that I would be able to see you in such a miserable state in my life. As expected, your good behavior is blessed by the heavens. I know that once you appear in front of me, you won't say anything nice, but I still feel very unhappy. Yerek tried his best to keep his voice from trembling and tried to be as calm and normal as usual. He then turned his gaze to the other person. It's just that I'm really surprised that you're here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not interested in admiring other people's miserable state, whether it's my own people or my enemies, Noah said faintly. I just want to know how difficult it is to deal with Lancelot in the state of the god of disobedience. Is that why you're here? Yerek laughed self-deprecatingly. Well, at least that's a convincing reason, unlike the woman beside you, whose mind is twisted. I don't want you to say that, Your Highness the Black Prince with a twisted mind, Alice said nonchalantly as if she was really admiring Yerek's miserable state. Anyway, the reason why you're so badly injured must be that you found out that Lancelot was accumulating power and was preparing to descend as the god of disobedience. In order to prevent the enemy from becoming too powerful, you thought that you had to take action at that time and take advantage of the opportunity to kill Lancelot. In the end, you were defeated by Lancelot, right? Yerek was suddenly speechless. It seems that I was right, Alice said cheerfully. But it's also true. Black Prince Yerek is a self-proclaimed god-slayer as a wise man and counselor. In order to show his rationality and to prove that he's different from others of his kind who only know how to fight, he must think that it's a stupid thing to let the enemy increase his power. But that's because of your twisted mind. TSK. Yerek smacked his lips. What makes you say that? Is it wrong to think this way? Of course it's right to think this way. The problem is what you did next, Alice said directly. Anyway, although you calculated the pros and cons clearly, because of your pride, you would never do something like a sneak attack. You must have provoked Lord Guinevere and Lancelot in front of them and started a fight, right? Yerek's mouth twitched. Obviously, Alice had hit the nail on the head again. Chapter 1464. In fact, what happened was not much different from what Alice had said. Lancelot appeared as the god of disobedience, and Yerek was almost immediately aware of it. As soon as he noticed Lancelot's abnormality, Yerek immediately rushed in his direction without any hesitation, not caring about Athena's abnormality. That was to be expected. Compared to Athena, Lancelot was undoubtedly the target that Yerek wanted to get rid of. Because of Guinevere, Yerek and Lancelot had fought many times over the years, and had already formed a lot of grudges. Naturally, with Yerek's personality, it was impossible for him to watch Lancelot's strength increase. Originally, Lancelot was only a shadow of God protecting Guinevere. If Lancelot got rid of his identity as a guardian and no longer appeared as a shadow of God, but as the god of disobedience, his strength would definitely increase by several times, and there would no longer be a problem with the duration of his appearance. In that case, Lancelot would undoubtedly become a very troublesome opponent for Yerek. There was no other reason other than the fact that the two were not compatible. As the most original god of war of steel, Lancelot's martial arts were not inferior to Luo Hao's. It was precisely because of this that Lancelot naturally mastered the mind's eye skill that could break through lightning speed. Once, in Nabali, Lancelot used the mind's eye skill to break through Yarek's lightning speed, and almost gave Yarek a fatal blow. At that time, Lancelot was still in the form of a shadow of God, and could only appear for a short period of time. Moreover, his strength was not as high as those of the highest level gods, and had a lot of limitations. If Lancelot appeared as the god of disobedience, it was only natural that his strength would increase sharply, and even the duration of his appearance would be cancelled. For Yarek, who used lightning speed as his main fighting method, it was really too disadvantageous. For this reason, Yarek naturally had to prevent Lancelot from appearing before he obtained all the strength of the god of disobedience state. Unfortunately, Lancelot's appearance had been going on for some time, and his strength had accumulated a lot. Thus, Yarek, who had brazenly entered Lancelot's territory, was met with a deadly counterattack from the pure-blooded steel hero. He was heavily injured and could only rely on his speed to escape. It was just as Alice had said. Undoubtedly, Yarek had calculated the pros and cons, but because of his own aesthetics, he disdained to use a sneak attack. In the end, under the situation where his seraphic speed authority was restrained, he was naturally counterattacked by Lancelot, whose strength had suddenly increased, and almost died. It was impossible for Yarek not to see through this in advance. It was impossible for Yarek, who had already fought Lancelot many times, not to understand that his greatest battle technique had been countered by his opponent. However, Yarek didn't choose to launch a sneak attack. Instead, he chose to challenge them head-on. Perhaps you miscalculated Lancelot's strength, but more importantly, you knew what the outcome would be, yet you still chose to fight based on your own aesthetics. That's why you ended up like this, isn't it? It was as if Alice had witnessed the entire battle with her own eyes. She spoke with fervor and assurance. Undoubtedly, you are smart, but you insist on some stupid principles in some unnecessary places. That is proof of your twisted mind, Alexander. You really are a god slayer. Don't talk to me as if you know me very well. I'm not that close to you. Yarek couldn't help but feel a little agitated because his sore spot had been poked. In the end, he forgot that he still had a fatal injury, which caused his chest to tighten, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Alice laughed. You can still speak so agitatedly even after suffering such a serious injury. It seems that you are fine. Indeed, you are worthy of being called the Demon King. Yarek could only close his eyes. Out of sight, out of mind. It seemed that being reduced to such a miserable state in front of his enemy really made Yarek feel extremely aggrieved. On the other hand, Alice was very happy. I finally returned the favor here, Alexander. After this time, I don't owe you anything. Although Alice and Yarek were enemies, they didn't have a grudge against each other. Instead, it was because of their positions that were hostile to other parties that led to this situation. In other words, they were the so-called political enemies. And since it was due to political hostility, it would never be mixed with personal feelings. For example, in the situation of dealing with Guinevere, Alice and Yarek had the same position and interests, so the two had cooperated many times. Because of this, Alice had been saved by Yarek once in the past. At that time, Alice's feelings were probably similar to Yarek's now. Seeing Alice continue to mock Yarek with a happy face, Noah couldn't help but shake his head. He stepped forward, took out a bottle of potion from his arms, opened the bottle, and poured it directly into Yarek's penetrated abdomen. Clang! The potion that was poured into Yarek's penetrated back immediately evaporated into a mist. It covered Yarek's body like a soft fluorescent light, emitting light. Under the illumination of the light, the wounds on Yarek's body that directly penetrated the front and back of his body began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Yarek only felt that the severe pain in his abdomen began to disappear little by little, and the lack of physical strength in his body began to recover little by little, which surprised him a little. After Noah poured the whole bottle of potion on Yarek's wound, the fatal wound on Yarek's abdomen had disappeared without a trace. The effect was more powerful than any magic or curse in this world. This made Alice cast her shining eyes on the potion bottle in Noah's hand. What a powerful elixir. I'm afraid that even the highest level witch can't make such a powerful elixir. Not directly drinking it, but sprinkling it on the body, can it heal the Godslayer's wound? Yarek sat up from the pool of blood and stroked his unscathed abdomen. He also stared at the potion bottle in Noah's hand. That is indeed a very amazing thing. It was important to know that the Godslayer's body was immune to all magic and curses. If it was directly drunk, it would still have an effect on the Godslayer. But sprinkling it on the Godslayer's body, even the most effective elixir wouldn't work, right? Moreover, the effect was exceptionally amazing. Don't look at me like that. It's not as magical as you think. Noah casually threw away the potion bottle in his hand and said to Yarek. Your wound directly penetrated from the outside to the inside, and then from the inside to the outside. When the potion was sprinkled, it was equivalent to sprinkling it directly into your body. That's why it was effective. Of course, it was only effective to the extent of being effective. Even if it was effective, being able to heal such a serious injury in such a short time was enough to prove the magic of the potion. However, that was to be expected. That potion bottle, even in Yggdrasil, was the highest level consumable item. Once used, no matter how much HP a character had, it would instantly restore them to full HP. Yarek, who slowly got up from the ground, silently looked at Noah. After a while, he spoke. You must have a reason for saving me, right? Yarek didn't use a questioning tone. Instead, he used a very certain tone. In response, Noah nodded and said bluntly. I have a target that I must fight. Hearing this, Yarek narrowed his eyes and said a name. Athena? That's right. Noah nodded. But, I don't want to be disturbed in the process of fighting Athena. I see. Is that your goal? Yarek shrugged. You want me to restrain Lancelot, right? Noah did not comment, which made Yarek laugh. Very well. This time, our interests are aligned. I'll go with your wishes. Noah and Alice exchanged glances with each other and smiled faintly. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.